How? How the hell did you get here?
I don't even know if I'm here yet. We're going to find out pretty soon if we are. And
we're 15 minutes late.
And we're going to try to break precedent and have audio right at the gate. Do we?
Yeah. Hello, Cleveland. Can y'all hear us? Hey, Simon.
I have everything set properly. I have everything reset. I have a new rig put together. It works. We've got sparkling water to start.
Sparkling
if
water.
that's any indication of how south the festivities are going to go later on in the show.
I did meth about 10 minutes ago. I forgot to tell you.
I just really interesting. You should bring that up. I just binge watched this whole 5 or 6 part series on the Manson family on Amazon Prime.
On the what family?
Manson family.
The Manson family.
And the thing about it is there's a whole lot more footage and story and stuff than you've ever seen on a program. And
as we're doing this, let's troubleshoot this. Bradley's saying it's really low on the left channel. Does that mean anything over there? On the mixing board?
1 2 1 2 1 2.
But only from Steve? So Steve is quiet?
That's interesting because my microphone is louder on the mixer. We're both panned hard right and left. 1 2 1 2 1 2. All the levels are where they should be.
Can you send a little more juice?
I can, but I don't want to do that until I know that it's...
Oh, this is weird. KT88 says Steve dominates.
Yeah. Let's see. 1 2 1 2. Go ahead, Joe.
1 2 1 2.
1 2. Joe.
Test test. 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, they're the same in here.
Okay.
I've got them panned hard right and left.
John says sounds fine to him, but Steve is loud.
Here, Steve and left Joe, right?
That's correct.
And then, yes, Steve is a little bit louder.
Steve's a little bit louder.
All right. So do we want to turn me up or Joe down?
No. She's saying that you are louder.
Okay. So I'll just simply do this. How's that? 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
That sounds better. Okay. So just gonna say
It's fine? Okay. All right. Come on back and talk about the Manson family. I was ready for an uplifting story.
just they brought up the
Bobby Beausoleil.
they just everything and the whole thing. Well, they talked about meth and they had one of the girls that wasn't one of the girls that were involved in the murder. She was just one of the family. And she was like, well, we were doing a lot of drugs. We were either doing a lot of cocaine or a lot of meth. I don't know which. And I think that was just the whole state of the thing, which was just I don't know what I'm taking. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I know the woman you're talking about because I read kind of anew about that whole thing like 3 or 4 months ago for some random reason.
The new footage and pictures that they were showing were just like to the level of it's still unwatchable by a human without just being revolted.
Did you know that Trent Reznor got a hold of the front door of the house that Sharon Tate was murdered in? When they were pulling the house down, he got a hold of the front door, took it with him to New Orleans when he bought his house in the Garden District, and put that door on his house in New Orleans. He's since sold that house, but that's some morbid shit.
Well, didn't he rent that house or something and live there for a while? He either rented
yeah,
it,
that's possible.
He either rented it or bought it and
He was
had it
just
torn
chilling.
down. Or
I don't think he bought it. I think he wanted to buy it.
But yeah, it was finally torn down. And the La Bianca house was for sale 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Over in Los Feliz, and we went over and looked at it, and there was a whole article about it, whether they were going to be able to, whether it was still even going to be sellable, but lots of pictures inside and out in the yards and stuff like that, and it was nice. You know, it was the big thing about where they were asking $1.75 million for it in the area that it was selling for. That was kind of a low price.
Well, yeah, Los
And-
Feliz. It's like,
And especially
do you remember
it
what
was
it
on this
exactly?
mound where you had a view of Griffith Park, and you could see downtown. You could see,
Oh.
you just had this expansive
That's
view.
prime.
And it's prime. So we were thinking $1.75 million, and I wonder how hard it's going to. The article talked about how hard it was going to be for them to get the asking price, and of course it went like a few $100,000 above the asking price. So somebody was just like, "What's a great property?" You know,
Well,
yeah, something bad happened a long time ago. It's been long enough.
Oh, man.
I don't think it'll ever be long enough. But
Yeah. Do you know Jonathan Davis, the lead singer for Korn? He bought Ted Bundy's beetle
oh,
that he
jeez.
killed many people.
Jeez.
And he said he would just go sit in the car alone in the
Okay,
garage.
now that's a kink that I don't even care to explore. What interesting thing I found out about the Spawn Ranch where they stayed?
Yeah.
They really covered this part about them
That burned
going.
down, right? It's
Yeah,
kinda
it burned.
wiped out.
Yeah, there was a whole during a drought. There was a big fire out in that whole area that burned everything down, and Spawn Ranch went with it. But during the time they were living there, there were a lot of cops coming around and sniffing around and stuff like that, and they decided to move out to Death Valley, and they found a place to live out in Death Valley. So they were gradually moving everything out to Death Valley, and they really covered that. And I never really heard that much about that before. So that was kind of intriguing. And another thing I found out was right near Spawn Ranch, in the 40s and 50s, there was this other cult that was ensconced up there above Chatsworth in the hills.
Uh-huh.
That was this benevolent association, and then whenever anything happened up in that area, you'd see these people in robes coming out of this valley and helping out, being first responders, helping neighbors if they had a fire or a medical emergency or something like that. These people would like come out and help them.
Oh, so
and
they're like the Good Samaritan
They
cult.
were like Good Samaritans, and then it turns out, of course, the thing starts to disintegrate, because it turns out that the Lord and Master, who went by the name of Krishna Venta, turned out that he was sleeping with all the other members' wives, and
Yeah.
they were
Why have a
bringing
cult
in,
if you can't do that?
Yeah, they were recruiting young girls, and everybody's like, how come we're recruiting a lot more young girls than young men? You know, finally, two of the brothers, they called themselves brothers. Two of the brothers decided to assassinate Krishna Venta, and so they went out and bought a bunch of dynamite and put it in this military duffel bag and hauled it all back to have a conference with the.
And all they had to do was just bring one of these.
Yeah,
and turn it all
really,
the way up.
exactly.
Just get a
Well,
power cord.
well, they had something like 36 sticks of dynamite in this duffel bag, and all these, blasting caps and stuff. And they had this. They were having this, confrontation, a verbal confrontation, and then the next thing, like people's windows are getting blown out from 5 miles away because they're in this canyon. And the shock wave compressed in the canyon and blew out down towards Topanga and
No kidding.
like literally blew the door off of the nearby fire station
Wow.
and blew people's windows out. Oh, some woman, it was about a mile away, it knocked her out of bed. They so overdid it. It just completely flattened the entire complex.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like, so there's something about that area.
Wow.
something about that Northridge Chatsworth. Of course, Northridge is where the quake was.
Mm-hmm.
There's something just in every way possible cracked about that area.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of cracked energy.
So now we have Rory saying the audio is terrible. Now we have like conflicting opinions on how it sounds.
Okay, well, just so you know, what we did was we went back to trying the lapel mics because we were having a little bit of room feedback issues and things like that, and we just thought that we would try the lapel mics again. And so I spent a fair amount of time playing with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. So other than the fact that it might be mid-rangey sounding a little bit compared to the previous setup, it's clean and undistorted here and balanced left and right and all of that. So I'm gonna conjecture that maybe there's something to do with your reception or your a lot of clothing noise. Well, I'll try to stop moving around so much. Does something with lots of... Okay, well, it's going to be a bit distracting having each voice come out only one side at a time. Oh, well, I'll tell you what, I can address. What I'll do is I'll pan them 45 degrees instead of hard right and left. How about that?
What if you bring in a little of this room mic?
I have some. I can bring more. L45. 4, 5. Come on. Give me what I asked for.
Yeah.
See? Me trying to be accommodating. Where does it get me?
Yeah, Scott, we still have the same room mic set up here for a little bit of air.
All right.
Yeah, a little auto-tune and delay. That sounds good.
Why don't you just cooperate with me?
Got any flange you can add?
R, 4, 5. There we go. Okay. File. Save that. And then you want a little bit more room mic audio. Okay, that I can accomplish. We'll just crank that up to 25. And
Yeah, some plate reverb.
all right, and that's all I'm going to mess around with it tonight. So,
All right.
yeah, we're going to be adjusting a little bit, and you'll hear stuff with the mics until you don't hear it. All right.
All right.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
You know, like during that same time period in the San Gabriel Valley, there's the whole kind of Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, kind of Aleister Crowley lineage occult business going on.
Well, one of the Manson guys was a big Scientology dude.
Oh,
one of the
really?
main guys.
Yeah, we can run the broadcast through the PS2.
Yeah, really. So just before we get any farther, I just want to say hello to everybody.
Stick the mics in your mouths.
Yeah.
That is great advice.
Dan, hey, how's it going? Bradley, John. Who else we got here? We got everybody. Can you put a smidgen of reverb on the voices? Well, we'll try. I tried to beef up the room a little bit. Maybe that'll do it. Who else do we got here? Mark, hey, how you doing? And Michael Torrent, dude, he's laughing. He's laughing at us.
Of course.
And you
That's
should
what we're here for.
as well. You should be. And we're laughing back. Guy that has way too many power amps for any one human being.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He's got every power amp on the planet.
Wow.
How many racks do you have full of power amps in your studio, Michael? My guess is 3, just dedicated only to power amps.
Oh, wow. So it must be a collection thing and not necessarily a function thing,
I
right?
don't know. Seems like he uses the stuff.
Yeah. Huh. Well, let's see. What else? What are we going to do? Are we done?
Yeah.
All right.
Good night.
That was awesome, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
The last episode, Joe had got me a bottle of tequila.
That's right, for your birthday.
For my birthday.
Yeah.
And it was a brand called Terramana. And I researched it after he left because I'd never heard of it.
Oh, that's good because I didn't.
And
I was
figured
just
you
in there,
didn't.
and there were 2 guys like going, "Have you had this one? Have you?" No. So, there was something odd about it too. Like, wasn't it finished in like an
Oak barrels, yeah.
elderberry cask or something?
Oak barrels. Used oak barrels. So, usually I talk too much before the show with Joe and tell him all the things that I'm thinking, and I didn't do any of that this time.
Yeah, this is going to be a big reveal for me.
Yeah,
What the hell did I buy you?
It was
You're about to explain it to me.
it was a bottle called of a brand called Terramana. So, which is 2 different languages. Terra is Latin for earth, and mana is, I think it was
It's like
Asian or
energy.
Indonesian
Yeah.
for
It's like life force.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. So turns out it's another Rockstar brand. It's not Rockstar, but it's another celebrity-owned brand. And the guy who,
Someone mentioned that in the store.
yeah. It's
Wasn't it Puff Daddy or something?
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Okay. They said,
The Rock is in the tequila biz now.
Huh?
And so I watched a little video on it. It was pretty cool, and I read some reviews on it. And the general consensus is that it's kind of aimed at the mid-range sipping market. And a lot of the reviewers.
We sipped a little of it.
Yeah,
It had an interesting creamy.
we
thing.
sipped it in tall shot glasses though.
Uh-huh.
So tonight we're gonna sip it in our flutes that we use.
So are we going to sip it and then margarita it?
Yeah, we're gonna sip it and then we're gonna margarita. And not only are we gonna margarita it, but I got some of that Tijan.
We're going to Variac it as
I
well.
got some of that Tijan salt, the
Oh.
spicy salt blend. That,
Oh,
that,
yeah.
we're gonna do that on the rim, and we also got some Himalayan pink rock salt.
Yeah,
We're gonna
okay,
Try that.
great.
We're gonna try all kinds of things.
Great. All right.
So, what else is new and exciting?
Nothing.
Yeah, mana is Polynesian. That's correct. Yeah. Earth food from the gods. That sounds about right. Is the 1.5 liter of Patron gone yet?
Oh, yeah,
Not
Mark,
only
I
is it
forgot.
not gone, but it's 1 3/4 liter. So it's even less gone.
Man, I forgot you have that thing.
Yeah, I'm afraid to even touch it because there's still like 4 or 5.
It's kind of like one of those deep rock water dispensers, only
Yeah.
with tequila.
With the amount of backlog that we've sort of accumulated, we're just going to have to throw some big party.
Yeah. Well, I think when I walked in, I said, "Hey, are we going to do Irish car bombs again?" Because I thought you still had leftovers.
I do. I still have 8 bottles of Guinness in the refrigerator.
We still got to do those because those are fun.
I mean,
They're
we
fun.
we talk big about alcohol, and the truth is that we're
Well, here's what
big
it is
giant
for me.
pussies most of the time.
Well, I'm like,
We're busy.
I got like one. What do I want to say? Like, I'll do one roller coaster per show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can't do roller coaster after roller coaster after roller coaster.
Yeah.
So, I guess in one sense, I'm a complete wuss. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, I want to do all the stuff. But just, one show at a time.
Yeah.
I got to get up in the morning.
Plus, it just works out better for our schedule to do the show Sunday night instead of Saturday, so we don't have the
weekend leeway.
Yeah,
to
right. We don't have
recoup on
the
Sunday.
recovery Sunday to fall back on and just be deadbeats. So,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, we're
there's
still
that.
deadbeats.
Huh?
We're still deadbeats.
Well, yeah.
We play
He's
guitar.
beyond the normal
Yeah.
level of dead beats.
Yeah. So what's going on, guys? It'd be fun to. I mean, we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. What are you guys drinking this evening? Anything fancy, or are you guys all on the Sunday train as well? I remember we used to be really good at talking about novel stuff we were drinking when we got on, and everybody would chime in. And I think we just dropped off, so did everyone else. Oh, here's a question from Michael. This is a good one. Coffee, right on. Answer that one.
The Deliverance, just hands down. That amp was meant to be the distillation of everything that was going on between the Ultra Lead and the CLX and then the 2-channel CL amps. And the conversation was really, what really is our core sound? We've talked about this a few times. But
Yeah, it's worth talking about again.
It bears repeating, I'm
Yeah.
sure. That and one of the other things that we want to do tonight is answer some of the questions that we didn't get to last time, and some of the comments from the previous show that were interesting. So we'll get into that. But the idea was that we wanted to talk about what really is the Fryette sound. What is that core DNA of our amps, and how do we get that across to people what we do, or what the essence of the sound is, since everything we made up to that point was a multi-feature, multi-function amp that could do all kinds of different things.
The SIG-X came before that, right?
No, the SIG-X came after the Deliverance.
Oh, okay. But the SIG-X was kind of like, this should be something that anybody can do anything with. It's almost like the Swiss Army amp. And then the Deliverance is like, this is the core Fryette sound.
Yeah, well,
Make of it what you
every
will.
time we come up with a new model of amp, of course, we get all of the. It would be great if it just had this, you know, and everybody has their pet feature that is. It's a bummer that it isn't on this particular model.
Yeah.
So, of course, the more you try to appease that group, the more you go down a rat hole, because you give them that, and then they go, okay, well, the next thing I wish it had.
Yeah.
And it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that we wanted to address the issue of tight and dry. What is tight and dry? What do people always say the amp is tight and dry? No matter what amp we would make, it's tight and dry. And you've been studying psychology. And I stumbled across a little concept, a psychological concept, the other day while I was reading about confirmation bias, trying to understand more about confirmation bias. And it started with a photo of chess pieces all lined up with a light colored background, and the same chess pieces on a dark colored background. And in one photo the chess pieces look white, and in the other photo they look black, but they're both the same color. It's the context. Your brain is doing this thing.
Oh, this is that white, pink dress, blue dress thing.
Yeah,
from 10
yeah.
years ago?
And it's there's a psychological reason how your brain interprets things and puts them together for your perception. And then it expands and expands, and they get into this concept of trapped priors. What's called trapped priors.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about this?
I had never heard that, and then you sent it to me, and I thought, well, I know what that means, just from understanding language, but
Right. It's basically what it is it's a function of your brain. It's a function of perception, wherein once you perceive something to be a certain way, it tends to get reinforced, and no matter how much you try to undo the effect of that, it actually reinforces the effect in the effort to reduce the intensity of the effect on your brain. So no matter how the reduction of all this is, we could make an amp that is so spongy that it would be unplayable and put it out there, and somebody would be able to play it and react to it, how spongy it is or whatever. A certain subset of people will still say it's tight and dry, no matter how much evidence to the contrary that you give them to a point of excess. So a case in point is you brought up the Sig X.
Uh-huh.
The Sig X was intentionally looser and more forgiving than the Ultralead, because it was meant to do a subset of things that the Ultralead did and that the Deliverance did, and it was in a little bit more of an affordable price point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it was just made it. The idea was to make it a little broader in appeal and a little easier for people to play that don't really appreciate how accurate the Ultralead might sound to them or feel to them. So that's really where the Sig X came from. The Deliverance came from, let's distill down the DNA of our amplifier sonic vision down into a thing that just says this is what the sound is. And the interesting thing about that is you can get the Deliverance to do just about anything that the Ultralead will do, just one thing at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I think later, we took the choke out of the power supply to give it a little bit more bounce, and a lot of people appreciated that. But in essence, when I go back and listen to the old stuff, whenever we get something in for repair that's an older model, and I go, oh, I haven't seen one of those in a while, I want to play through that. I'll play through it, and I go, I just don't get this tight and dry thing.
Well, I don't get it either.
But you know what? My playing style has evolved, and that isn't to say that it's got better. It's just into a different place, and I don't pick as hard as I used to.
Huh.
And I try to hold on to the pick a little harder, and I try to lighten up on my
Do you remember
on my left hand on the neck, and it makes it much easier for me to play the amp, and it doesn't feel as accurate or stiff as I used to think it was. Now, the very first amp that we came out with, it was pretty tight and dry, but ever since then, it's evolved to being a little bit more open and naturally responsive and forgiving. A little bit, not too much, not in the way of a Mesa or a Wagner, but more. And
do you remember the first couple years I knew you, and I kept coming back to you talking about how the notes leapt off the fretboard when I played through? I mean, at the time, it was primarily the GPDI, I think. But I really noticed it. And I think then I took what did I take home? I took a couple heads home at different points. I'm like, oh, no, this is like the DNA in here. And to me, maybe this is tight, that the notes, to me, are popping off the fretboard. You know what I mean? Rather than you're sinking into a sponge, which is not what I wanted. I wanted stuff to, I guess, maybe that popping off the fretboard, maybe that is more articulate, right? That, and I felt like because it wasn't sort of mushy and collapsing on itself, I could play tighter intervals with a more overdrive and having the amplifier articulate those things.
Well, that goes directly back to your style, because you're all about complex chord progressions that morph into other complex chord progressions. And then when I watch you play, I feel like I'm sitting in the driver's seat of somebody that's driving a Formula One around a racetrack and trying to just mentally keep up with what is going on, because you have a great rhythmic ability, but you also are exploring the chordal relationships all over the fretboard, and a really spongy amp would just smear all that out of existence.
But I still like gain. Like I like our rock sound. So I want the best
You
of
want the
both
gain
of those worlds.
and you want the articulation
Yeah.
all at the same time. And that's
Uh-huh.
really what we've sort of, as far as feel and function has been, that's sort of always what my goal was. But as far as the voicing, how is it different than Mesa or Marshall? And it's always been, well, the Mesa is more pinched and
Sure.
and kind of shrill on the top, and Marshall is bright, and the power amp has more of an eval, and our amps have more transparent air on the top, and the vowel when you're pushing the power amp is more of an ah vowel.
Yeah.
So it's more of an open, relaxed, sort of broader mid-range impact. Those
Definitely.
are subtle things, though. They're hard to hear in a mix when you've got 2 or 3 different
Oh,
amps.
but they stick
on a
out to me
record.
like crazy. That's what I'm listening for in an
That's
amplifier.
what you're listening for, and that is a.
But you know who hit me that was Alan Holdsworth. He was the first guy who
Yeah.
described things like that. And I went, "Oh, that's what I've
Yeah.
been looking for.
Well,
is that
that's-
language?"
But see, that's the journey that you go on as a player. If you stick with it and you start getting more attuned to what your own creative abilities are and what you want to do with them, then those things become progressively more important. If you're just in a cover band and you're just trying to get this certain sound the right way, then yeah, you're going to go buy a tube screamer and a 100-watt Marshall, and
Yeah,
you know, and
I
a
got to
wah-wah,
sound like
and-
Texas Flood on this song,
Right,
and then I got to sound
right.
like Steely Dan on this song, and then I got to do the Van Halen thing, and then I have to do the Layla tone, and then I have to,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So modeler is like perfect for you.
yeah. Or who was the guy who I remember? I think he was using an LX2, and you were telling me that he was really into using whatever deal where he could just load up, like, okay, we're doing a Stones tune, everybody's like airdropping the charts to everyone on the stage right now, and I'm downloading my Keith Richards 1969 tone pack.
Yeah, he's a sideman guy. His name escapes me right at the moment. Joel.
Yeah, great player, right?
Yeah, he's a great player, and he plays with everybody. He's on 5 different tours simultaneously. He's works so often. I don't even bother asking him what gig are you doing, because he'll say, I don't know. I just have to be someplace at 8,
Right.
and then while he's on his way to do
But-
that gig, his gear is on another backup.
Kind of his rig speaks to that.
Yeah,
It can be anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he really uses the neural
Oh, is that what he's using?
box, because the feature where you get on your phone and he had the favorites. He had all these favorites selected. So when a song came up where Keith Richards comes in and sits in with this artist that he's the side guitar player for, he like just scrolls through, clicks on Keith Richards, and he's got a Keith Richards sound in his rig. So when he's playing rhythm, and Keith Richards is like going, all right, you know, even though just before that he was sounding like you know, Christopher Cross or something. He's just one of these guys that plays. He has no personality of his own style. He plays every other thing though, and he's so good at it and so proficient and so professional. And his rigs, he's got his rigs, 2 or 3 ABC rigs all dialed in for a particular thing. He gets there on time. He does the job. He gets the hell out. He's like one of those guys that just works all the time. That's his gig, and he makes good money doing it. And he bought the neural thing, and then he went, yeah, it's good. It does all this stuff, but it's missing something. And he came over, and I plugged him into LX2, and he goes, okay, that's it, fine, and done and gone.
Yeah, because he's off to his next gig.
Yeah.
All right, answer a couple of questions here real quick.
Yeah.
Ah.
Where indeed it's coming.
Okay.
I don't want to say too much about it, because every time I open my trap, you guys like chase after me
Next.
and are you still making the Pitbull CL 100? I love that amp. It's like one of my favorite amps that we've ever made, and it doesn't sell. And I've had people go, "What do you mean it doesn't sell?" It doesn't sell. if you get that amp, you totally get it, and if you don't get it, you totally don't get it. It's an interesting amp. It's like if it lands on the right person the right way, they will fight to the death to like hang on to it and sing its praises. And if you don't, it's just one of those amps that it'd be on the radar and then off the radar and then on the radar and off the radar. And whenever we would like tell dealers, okay, we want to get an ultra lead, and we want to get a couple of power amps and some cabs, and you should get a 100 CL. Yeah, we don't really understand that amp. It's 2 channels, but the channels are the same, but they're different. It's like there are 2 channels that either channel can be set to be clean, medium gain, or high gain. Either one of them. They're voiced slightly different. So you could pick the A channel for the clean and the B channel for the solos, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. It's so stupidly easy, you don't even have to think about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't get how you do that.
Dave's not here.
Yeah, I don't get how you do that. I mean, how would that work? How it works is you set it up the way you want it to work, and that's how it works. Yeah, but I mean, how do you get clean out of over? Yeah. You'd be surprised how it went over people's heads trying to explain it.
To happen. Thank
so
you.
I stopped trying to explain it.
And you
Jim Tyler has a thing.
Too.
Jim Tyler has a saying: "You either get it or you don't." That's their corporate statement. You either know or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you don't, hey, there's a lot of other guitar companies out there that would just make your life sublime, and more power to them. But it ain't us, babe. And the 100 CL and the 50 CL, to the people who own them, they will never part with them. But they don't. We don't enjoy. We never enjoyed significant enough sales of that model to keep it in production.
All right.
So we pulled it with the intention of maybe coming back and revisiting it some other way at some future point, and we haven't got to that point yet.
Libations,
just to
food
bring everybody up to speed, Terramana, and I read one review about it where they kind of got picked on for making their label look like the Casamigos label with the
did they?
yeah with the
I can't tell.
with the signature and the bottle date, and it's gluten free. Oh, alcohol is gluten free. What a concept, you know.
Wow. Okay, I think this is a question.
I have an G100S. Love it, but need channel foot switcher. Has 2 leads going in the rear of the amp. Does it have EQ? That's the killer. And then we'll talk about what it is. So here we have the Terramana, and when we first tried it, we tried it in the straight double shot glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're doing it in the.
I'm getting a grapey, fruity thing on the nose.
When we cracked it open the first time in those shot glasses, I was getting banana like crazy. I'm not getting banana now. I'm getting like grapes and caramel.
Yeah. Oh, caramel. I get the grape thing strong. And I remember it was really creamy and banana-like on the palate.
Still got the creamy on the palate, but it's got a little bit more of a distinct personality than I think we thought it did previously.
Oh, and there's the cask. I taste the wood. Do you get that?
Yeah. The storage shed.
Yeah,
again.
The storage shed. You're welcome.
Where all the bodies are buried.
Mm-hmm. I like this.
I do like this. I do like it. I like it better in this glass than the.
I agree.
Than the shot glass.
Yeah, this is fun. Okay, so we're looking for, maybe it's down here.
Yeah,
if John responds which version it is.
Yeah, we just need to know if if your amp has EQ. Amanda, hello.
Okay, here's some interesting question that like everybody out there can chime in on. And
All right. Well, let me just wrap on the G100. The G100 is the predecessor to the Ultralead,
oh, okay,
and
I didn't even know that
And
existed.
it initially only had 2 power tubes to get 100 watts, like the SIG-X did later. And at the time, we were having trouble with 6550 and KDA suppliers. It was that transitional period where we were having difficulty with quality. So we stopped doing it with the 2 6550s and made it just for reliability reasons. And then that morphed into the Ultralead when people were like, well, it's 100, but 100 what? What's 100 mean? And I thought, you know what, this needs a little bit of a rebrand. So we renamed it the Ultralead.
Stick it in the toaster again.
And what?
Stick it in the toaster again.
Stick it in the toaster
Refry
again.
those beans. Let's
Yeah.
go.
And so it was the transition from the CLX into a more aggressive sounding amp, but it still had the same dual 1/4-inch foot switch cable breakout for the channel switching and boost
Oh,
and
got
effects
it.
loop function.
Okay.
And then later on, it got, as an Ultralead, it got the EQ as an option. And I think that we had done a couple of 100s with the EQ, and I don't recall. But to answer your question, the reason that we need to know whether or not it has an EQ is because the foot switch for the EQ version is not available at the moment. But if you have the one without EQ, we can make the foot switch for that one.
Okay.
And so just send the serial number of the amp to support@fryette.com and indicate whether or not it's got EQ, and we'll be able to do the foot switch for it if it's the non-EQ model.
Sure.
All right. What is a spongy? A spongy amp doesn't sound so much like anything. It's what it feels like.
Absolutely. You can't. I mean, when I hear somebody playing something with like a real chewy neck pickup tone, that can sound kind of spongy to me. But that's the closest I can get in terms of hearing it. To me,
You know
a
what
spongy
really-
amp,
okay.
it's a tactile experience. It's not how it sounds. You can't really hear that.
You know what really sounds spongy? Steven Stills
Uh,
on
I won't remember that. What tune? Do you know?
whenever he does the I don't remember the Crosby, Stills and Nash song that Back to the Garden. Da, 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 back to the garden.
Oh yeah. But I don't remember the Serious Caramel now.
Yeah. That is a definition of a spongy sound.
I don't remember.
That's like a Gretsch guitar going into a beat up tweed Fender,
Oh.
and it's got it cranked, and it sounds spongy. You can hear the delay in the attack when he hits the strings. It kind of goes.
Yeah.
You can hear it
Yeah.
all over that solo,
Yeah.
and that's really what makes the solo sound unique. Not the guitar or his style so much, or the tone of the amp. It's that the reaction of the amp is so out front in the mix that you can just hear it like
You can hear it doing its whole
it's wheezing.
Yeah, it's
It's absolute-
grabbing the note and then pushing it back.
It's absolutely wheezing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's struggling to grab the note and push it back.
I heard it the other day in the car, and I actually had to pull over and listen to it because I never really appreciated how unique of a guitar sound that was until somehow today. And I'm like, wow, listen to that. It's almost like it's dragging out so hard that you wonder how he could even phrase a solo because it's so behind the phrase that he's playing. It's just
Yeah.
like when you're playing in front of an audience and they're clapping and they're out of tune and you're trying to like play with the drummer, but the
Yeah.
clapping is so loud that you lose. That's kind of how it struck me.
Yeah, you have to recalibrate how you're like feeling time almost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is that kind of a similar question? Is what you're like the Fryette DNA, like what amp most encompasses that, or just piece of gear, does it have to be Fryette brand or could it be anything?
What piece of gear am I most proud of? So that would be
Probably something you built, designed. So like the key fob, probably
yeah, yeah.
that one.
The key fob is one of the things. See, it's the question that you ask me. You're going to get a different answer every time you ask me the question on any given day,
Yeah.
in the morning or the night or something.
You'll be like, I made some bitchin' pancakes this morning with whiskey.
Absolutely. Oh, I'll tell you what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of my whiskey waffles. And they
I knew you'd go there if I
effing
brought it up.
rock. They effing rock. And we talked about it and posted the recipe last year.
But we were talking about that was something we were supposed to do in season 2. Now we need to do it in season 3.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it because it's still.
Because we need to do a video of you making it.
I have to do a video of it because it's still. When we did it, it was COVID. It was like, okay, I'm bored out of my fucking mind.
Yeah.
It's 1:00 in the afternoon. I want waffles today,
Yeah.
and like I
That
got to
was- that
do
was a
something with the
COVID thing.
recipe, and I walked past. I walked past the sideboard, which, as a result of COVID, is just jam packed with every kind of booze. And we actually, when COVID started, we weren't even really drinking hardly at all.
Mm.
We were exercising and going down to
Well, that changed.
going down to the park and blah blah blah, and we just started like accumulating this backlog of different kinds of things. Not to drink our boredom away, but just taste testing everything.
Yeah.
It's just to alleviate the boredom. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And Erico is sensitive to gluten, and so a whiskey is gluten free, and certain kinds of whiskey, some are not. And so I just said, well, 1:00 in the afternoon, I'm putting together a thing, and I think, what am I going to put in here? What should I do to make this spice up this the recipe? And I pulled out a bottle of I don't know, Michner's or something like that, Michner's whiskey, and
Michter's?
and I put a shot in there, and it just lit those waffles on fire. It was great.
I want those now.
And one of you guys actually pointed out that by using whiskey in the recipe, it actually sort of replaces the taste of, because we made it with gluten-free flour, right?
Okay.
So it replaced the sort of characteristic of the gluten by using the whiskey
Huh.
without actually adding gluten to the recipe. And anyway,
I just want to eat them.
yeah, it's fluffy on the inside and crispy on the outside perfectly. The whiskey sort of like the sugar on the outside makes it crispy. It's mind-blowingly good. You know what?
Look,
And
I've yet to have something come out of the kitchen here that isn't fantastic.
and it's great with peanut butter.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way-
but you'd need cream nut.
You know what? Hey, I just found something that beats cream nut.
What's it called?
It's called Fox and Fog, I think.
Where'd you find it?
Where did I find it? At
Pawn shop?
Whole Foods.
Oh,
And
bummer.
I got my eye on it because it said extra crispy, extra crunchy. It's got more.
So it's like $20 a jar.
No. It's not. It's reasonably priced, and it's got more unground up peanuts in it than any other peanut butter. It's really crunchy. And I know that there are a few peanut butter freaks out there, so I'll drag out the jar in a minute and show it to you. But it's really good. So that's my latest. I think it's, you know what, it comes from New Zealand.
I want to eat some New Zealand peanut butter.
And
answer that one.
Yeah.
Do it, Steve. Oh, here it comes.
All right, here it is.
Fix
Here it
and
is.
Fog.
Fix and fog. Fix and fog. Let's see if I can do the
Product mode.
do the thing.
Yeah. Oh,
There it is, folks. Fox and fog. Fix and fog. Super crunchy. And it is monstrously crunchy. And it's the ingredients are peanuts. That's it.
from New Zealand.
Let me find the ingredients. Ingredients: peanuts and New Zealand sea salt.
All right.
So,
You heard it here first, kids.
if you
But now,
if you'd like to taste it,
oh, I would love to. And we need to know if the Ultra Lead is your tightest and driest
no.
amp. It's not? Oh. Hey now.
Right?
Hey now.
Who would have thought that you'd learn about an awesome peanut butter on our show?
That's. Mm-hmm.
Kind of turned your head a little bit, didn't it?
Cheers. Cheers. Let's drink some more.
Well, I was going to say, you know what you need to wash it down with.
Yeah.
How you doing on there? Oh, yeah, you need a little help.
Oh, wow. Just a little bit, because we're getting into martini. Yeah, thank you. So what's the tightest and driest amp in the Fryette
Oh,
DHT
stop
lineage?
already. Come on. Now I'm remembering why
That's going to sound good.
now I'm remembering why these little mics bug me, because the wires,
Because they're stupid.
they're stupid. Everything is stupid.
Everything's stupid, man. Cheers again. Cheers to stupidity.
It is.
To the
Fix and
absurdity of everything.
Okay,
And tequila.
When you first pour it in the glass and stick it up your nose, you do get a little banana.
Yeah.
But then the banana disappears and you get the caramel. And
I'm getting banana now and not the grape thing. When we first opened it up today, when I first smelt it, it was hugely grape.
and of course,
Now it's banana and caramel again. It's good. But hey, man, tequila's good. Peanut butter's good.
yeah,
Amplifiers are good.
tight and dry is good. The tightest and driest amp we make is the one that you play really tight and really dry. It's not about the amp, it's about how you play. So whatever way you play is what the amp sounds like, and it gives you what you do. And if you're a tight dry player, it gives you that. If you're a loose soft player, it gives you that. So that's my solution. The people that think it's really tight and dry are the guys that are like super anal retentive about their neck positions and their pick attack and the kind of pick that they use and all of that. A harder pick
Yeah.
will give you a drier sound. A softer pick will get you a
Oh
lighter
man.
sound.
Oh, we should do a whole episode on picks, or I should do a video on picks. That's one of the craziest. Like, talk about the cheapest tone sculpting tool.
You know, we actually got into the conversation about that at the factory
Test
last
some
week,
different picks, man.
where
Holy crap. Change your
one
life.
of the teams suggested, hey, you know, let's include picks in one of the product that we ship. Let's include picks. We put in a sticker. We put in the little card, the manual. If we use one, most of our manuals are online right now. But any little tchotchke that we put in
Yeah.
the product, let's put some picks in. And I said, you know, the pick thing has never really flown, and when we
It
actually
doesn't work for me.
it doesn't work for anybody, and you know why?
That's not my pick.
That's
I don't
not
want to
my
use
pick.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we had picks made 20 years ago, and we still got like 2,000 or 3,000 of them because nobody wants them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I use a
They
Fender
may be
Medium.
great, yeah.
This is a Fender Medium, but it's got our logo on it. That means it's not a Fender Medium. It's not tortoiseshell. Well, tortoiseshell isn't tortoiseshell. Yeah, but it's tortoiseshell. It's
Yeah.
not white. I got and I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Me with my Herco Heavy.
Yeah. And my Clown Vomit Fender Heavies. I've been using these
Herco Heavy. You can
since 1991, I think.
You can have a gold-plated garbage can full of guitar picks hand delivered to my front door, and I will take them down to the recycling center because this is the pick that I use. No matter how much I would appreciate a garbage can full of picks, a 10 years life supply. Actually, a garbage can full of guitar picks would be like 10 of my lifetime supply. I actually have one of my original Herco Heavies from 1973.
Wow.
I've got it in a little box in my jewelry box.
Wow.
A box in the box.
Now, I will use different picks for different jobs because I learned that it becomes really key when you're cutting acoustic stuff. And I remember learning that from my friend John Macy in Denver, who he did a lot of records with, he engineered a lot of the nitty-gritty dirt bands stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Super acoustic stuff. And he was telling me that they would get in, like a circle, start rehearsing a tune, and I don't know how many acoustic players were in that band, but they'd kind of go, this is a great pick song, don't you think? Yeah. And they had all these different gauge picks, because it's like, this song requires this. And, man, that changed my life, because, this is my electric guitar go-to. This sounds really crappy. Once you start experimenting with different materials, different gauges, on like strummy acoustic stuff, this is a bad choice for that.
Well, also, I don't play on the tip of the pick. I play on the end.
Yeah, you flip it around.
I play on the side.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and the reason I play on the
Pat
side
Metheny
is because
thing,
that's the rough edge of the pick. So,
it gives you bigger sound too.
and I don't even really play. I think I play terrible acoustic guitar.
Okay.
When I pick up a guitar, I'm just playing. It's a bigger box. I'm playing electric on it.
No.
I went in. I did a session last year for a friend of mine, and he says, "Oh yeah, and there's a part that needs acoustic guitar, so bring your acoustic." And I'm like, "I don't have an acoustic."
You don't even have one.
And he's like, "Oh, come on, you got it." I said, "No." Well, can you get one? I said, "I don't even know anybody that's got one that I could borrow." It never even occurred to me to ask you if you had one. I just.
Oh, yeah.
I said, "I don't know anybody," and he goes, "Well, my cousin has got a Martin acoustic. It's really nice, but he's kind of a jerk, and he probably won't loan it to me." And I'm like, "Look, let me just come down and do the parts that you wanted me to do, and if you can like scare up an acoustic, it could be a K. I could care less. You want that sort of vibey, ka-ching-ga-changa thing. It's not going to really make a lot of difference, and I'm probably going to disappoint you anyway. So maybe you're going to end up getting somebody else to do that." And he's like, "Well, whatever." I go down to the studio with my rig
Yeah.
and my guitars, and he said, "Oh, I got my cousin's guitar for you, so you're covered." And I'm like, "Oh."
I have to do this.
So I played an acoustic guitar part. It's just a strumming part, but it was kind of a melodic song. So I just played along with the melody. I was playing suspension stuff, and I was playing da 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 da, like off of a C. I was just playing along with the melody and trying to strum a rhythmic feel. I was thinking in terms of drums. I wasn't thinking in terms of like James Brown always said, "What's that silver thing?" "It's a drum." "What's that brass colored thing they stick in your mouth?" "It's a drum." Right? "And what are you playing there?" "What is that thing with the 6 strings on it?" "It's a drum." "Right." And if you say anything other than drum, he'd fine you $50.
Well, and
So
yeah.
I played the part, and he goes, "That is the best acoustic guitar part I've ever heard anybody play. That was beautiful." And I'm like going, "Don't ask me to do it again. I don't even know what I did." So the difference in a pick is of no consequence to me. If it isn't this great thing, and I suspect that a lot of why I can't hang on to this pick is because of the surface feel of it. It isn't even conducive to hanging on to it. There isn't anything about this pick, the rough edge, the fact that it's not anything. I still drop them like crazy. And you know what? I really used to punish myself about how difficult it was for me to hang on to a pick.
You punish yourself?
Yeah, like, how come everybody else plays guitar and they don't have all these problems? And then I was watching a Stone Temple Pilots video where they were playing in New Zealand recently, and I just went, I'm an idiot. I'm looking at the mic stands, and they have picks taped from the top to the bottom of the mic stand. There's like 40 picks on the bass player's mic stand. There's about 40 picks on the guitar player's mic stand. If you look at Cheap Trick, he's got like 40 picks taped to his mic stand, plus probably a gross of picks in each pocket. He's flicking them out in the audience. He's dropping them. He's like made a whole shtick about dropping picks. His shtick was he had 4 Sound City cabinets that had floodlights in them and a foot switch. So he would like make this face and do this thing with his hand and then hit this foot switch. This blaring light would come blasting out of his cabs, and then he would lean over and pick up a pick off the floor and go, here it is, and then turn the lights back off and start playing. That was his shtick. So apparently I shouldn't beat myself up so bad about dropping picks, because it's something that everybody does. But I just sort of think, God, how can you be so uncoordinated? You can't hang on to this little thing at least for one phrase? No. Oh, and I must play the pick sideways so it gets that little raw edge.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's the thing that grabs onto the string that makes it go bing!
Uh-huh.
It just
That's
ricochets
cool
out
sound.
of my fingers and off a wall, and I can't find it anymore.
Well, that's also, the Edge uses that pick. And that's a big signature part of his sound, is that grabby surface on there.
Yeah, and this multicolored carpet that we have in the room here, every time I drop a pick on there, it disappears. And I don't find it until we're getting ready for the next show. And all of a sudden, oh, there it is. There's one.
I see one right there.
Yeah, see? Yeah, I didn't see that one.
All right, so I don't know if you've played the Brown Eye 100 Deluxe to be able to compare that. So I imagine John is asking if it's like the Deliverance compared to the Friedman.
You know what? There is effectively no difference in that. It really isn't that much about how the amp responds. It's how much compression maybe you get the front end to do. I don't know. It's I don't even know where to go with that conversation.
Well, all right.
Because I think it really speaks to a dynamic where you're, like we were talking about, the trapped priors. This thing in your head that insists, it demands that you pay attention and fealty to a dynamic that only really exists in your mind. And you need to break free from it. You need to go bash your head against a cement wall a few times and just go, I'm here to play my damn guitar, however I play it. You pick up a Les Paul, and then you pick up a Strat, and you go, I was playing a Les Paul, now I'm playing a Strat. And it would be the same with amplifiers. This amplifier has a purpose in my arsenal. I use it for this. Or I love it on Tuesdays, but my Friedman BE, I love it on Thursdays. And never the twain shall meet. It's just, it's that.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
I have a friend, John, who loves the Ultralead to death, and he came to the NAMM show one time and he played a Strat through the Ultralead, and he just did not get along with it. And he goes, well, this amp just doesn't sound good with a Strat. And I said, you're out of your mind. You got that locked into your head. It didn't come from the amp. It came from the day that you tried it with a lot of distractions on a non-ideal.
Oh yeah, because stuff sounds good at NAMM.
Yeah.
Said no one.
And he's like, oh yeah, you're just saying that because he's like, we're good enough friends, and we're both Italian, so he feels free to just sort of lob expletives at me whenever I try to hit him with common sense. You're full of shit. So 5 years later, he does this gig with some different people, and he brings a Strat and he plays an Ultralead, and he texts me, the ultralead fucking kills with the Strat. What the hell was I thinking? And I'm like, okay, it only took you 5 years.
Yeah.
Some people never get that.
That's
never
funny.
get there, So
That's
congratulations, you made it.
Wow.
Last show, one guy whose name I don't recall right now, I think you'll remember, he asked about how long does it take to break in Fane speakers?
Mm.
And the thing about speaker break-in is it's kind of like wine. When you go to the store, there's wines that are meant to be opened and drank immediately. They're bottled that way. They have a certain amount of aging. They're not really aged a really long time. They're designed to buy at a reasonable price off the shelf, go home, pop the cork, have it for dinner, drink right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not particularly expressive or complex. They're just satisfying to drink with dinner.
Table wine.
Yeah, you drink this with steak. Drink this one with fish. You're good to go.
They're non-connoisseur
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah. And you might stumble across a particularly good tasting one that isn't that expensive. And you go, oh, I like this. Then there will be a wine that it needs to sit for a long time because the way it's made demands that it ages a certain amount of time in the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And it improves the experience, the drinking experience. If you wait a while, let it sit a year or two. But if you let it sit too long, it'll disappear on you, right? Mm-hmm. Speakers are a lot that way. Manufacturers design speakers to either break in quickly, and if they break in too quickly, they start sagging sooner than they probably should.
That's interesting.
If they take too long to break in, it'll be a lot longer before they start to get too useless. You'll have a broader range of positive playing experience out of using those speakers because the suspension is maybe a little stiffer at first, mm-hmm. and it's the materials are maybe a little heavier,
mm-hmm.
so they just take longer, like pages in a book.
Yeah.
Thick pages, they get less dog-eared over time than lightweight paper pages.
Yeah.
So it speaks to the useful life of the speaker within a certain sort of performance band, right? So I find that Celestians, for example, are designed to work well out of the box without a lot of break-in time. And those are the speakers that are, when they're old, the bottom end is really soggy,
right,
and kind of flatulent.
Yeah.
And so the Fanes are just kind of somewhere in the middle. They actually will break in the first first 15 to 30 minutes of playing it. It'll start breaking in. All speakers will do that. They'll relax a little bit because there's glue and there's, the paper density and there's the spider and all that stuff that
you play loud.
Well,
so,
but the thing is, when the speaker is made, they don't pound sound through it.
Uh-huh.
They just do a little quick sweep test to make sure that it's
right.
built properly and that it doesn't rub the voice coil and all of that.
Yeah.
So they don't put any pressure on it. That doesn't happen until you, the user, get it and start putting the screws to it.
Yeah.
And then it depends on what kind of player you are, how much you put the screws to it on the first go-round. Mm-hmm. If you really lay into it, it'll break in faster. If you're really timid, it'll take longer to break in. But in general, a couple of power chords with a reasonably powerful amp will loosen up the speaker.
Get stuff happening.
Get stuff happening
moving
in the first half hour.
Yeah, yeah.
And however, there will be a time after a couple of weeks or a month where you'll go, wait a minute, what just happened? All of a sudden, this cabinet sounds better than it did yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you won't be able to put your finger on what actually changed, but you'll just feel like it sort of transitioned. And you can't really predict when that'll happen, but I have experienced that where I just went.
But I
could have said, maybe it was because the hangover wore off. Maybe it was because it was summer instead of winter. It could have been.
that stuff I file under voodoo. It's
Yeah, because
like,
it is.
I don't know if my cabinet is sounding more, if my speakers are sounding more broken in, or if I just had a really great meal before I hopped on stage or something. You know what I mean?
It is voodoo. It's the same kind
It
of voodoo that
really is.
it's the same kind of voodoo that when we're testing amps and then one of them doesn't pass the play test, and it's like there's something wrong with this. Don't know what. We've examined it. All the components are right. It's clean inside and out. Everything looks right. All the voltages, blah blah blah. It's just like, what is it about this that makes it sound so horrible? Goes on the shelf, sits there. 2 weeks later, okay, all right, we got a little bit of breathing room. Let's pull out that one that kind of stank and like fire it up and see. Like, this thing sounds great. What were you even thinking? Goes in the box, gets shipped. That stuff just happens.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, the plan is we're just doing a thing that day.
So, Steve 56 Hemi has a question for you.
Yeah. You said there was an impedance mismatch on Marshall when they used 6550 instead of the EL34s to the output transformer. How do you calculate the impedance of a tube? You don't really. It's not a simple calculation because look up load lines. You want to really go down a rabbit hole. Google audio transformer load line.
I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
You can't make me.
It really
Won't do
has
it.
to do with it's the voltage and the current and the stated plate-to-plate impedance of the tube under certain conditions. What are the conditions? The voltage, the current, whether the screen voltage is the same as the plate voltage or at half. There's so many different conditional factors that determine
So
that.
yeah. So
And not only that, but I think somebody commented on the Variac video that you did. Somebody commented that they put 68.7s in their JCM 800 and it only put out 36 watts. It didn't put 50 when they just used two power tubes. And the reason for that, and they thought that the reason was because it was 68.7, they didn't put out as much power as the L34s. That's not the reason. The reason is the particular model of amp that you have has that 385 volt power supply in it. It's a much lower power supply voltage
interesting.
than the earlier like 1980, 1950.
Do you remember when
1959, thank you.
I basically asked, I didn't ask you for the calculation, but I was asking you to clarify this via text a couple weeks ago. This exact thing from that video. Do you remember that? And you were kind of saying, yeah, it's not that simple.
It's not simple at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
under the right circumstances, the plate-to-plate impedance on a pair of EL34s will be so close to 6550s as to be inconsequential. But still, the 6550s behave so differently than EL34s that they won't. The amplifier won't behave the same way. So I can imagine that whoever was working at Korg at the time that went to his superiors and said, hey, you know what? EL34s have the same plate-to-plate impedance as 6550s, so we could just put 6550s in it. And that would be technically true, but not under the specific circumstances of that amp, unless they lower the plate voltage. And then they start to kind of converge. And that's what the load line is all about. You can make a graph and you can plot how these different tubes will behave in these circuit under these different conditions. And that's not just a simple calculation. That's a lot of work. And most people don't do that work because they don't really need to. There's enough output transformer designs out there that can be cloned in order for you to just clone one and be done with it. And that's what probably 90% of amp manufacturers do. The only reason that we spend time fiddling around with primary impedances and plate to plate and transfer characteristics and stuff like that is because it's a game that I play with myself. With the Deliverance especially, when the Deliverance came out, I wanted it to just kick a JMP, a 1971 JMP, into the dumpster across the street.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to show that a modern amp can be just as threatening and obnoxious as a 500 plate volt 71 JMP.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems to be like this lost grail. It's not lost, it's just nobody does it because it's so impractical.
Mm.
It would be more practical if the tubes were really capable of handling that kind of abuse, and 6550s and KT88s are. Most manufacturers don't use them.
Thank you. Wait, this is
Because
water, right?
because they cost more, and if anything, if there's anything that Marshall does that tries to keep them competitive, it's cutting costs wherever possible.
Sure.
So they're
Want some agua?
in the 70s, they put the 6550s in there for economic reasons. Thank you. It was thank you means stop, just in case you had any doubts.
I'll go in a highlight reel. Stick that over the thing.
You would know that from
Right.
the last time your girlfriend said thank you, she really meant stop.
What's happening over here now?
Now, the salient word in that phrase is now. So KT88s, why I use KT88s in the Deliverance initially is because KT88s have that same European construction style as EL34s, which has this more transparent sort of atmospheric high-end harmonic detail.
Okay.
It's not, 6550s are more direct, they're more defined, they're
That totally makes sense.
they're more like 6L6s.
Yeah.
KT88s have the power and girth of 6L6s, but they have that delicate top and harmonic structure
Mm-hmm.
of the EL34s. So I thought, you know what would really be great is if we're going to make this thing sound so much like, what do you like, Quantra or let's go with the
Sweeter.
Quantra. What?
Bitter.
Sweeter what?
Sweeter. Bitter.
Bitter?
What else do we have going on in this blend so far?
Well, we're going to use the
Okay,
Terramana.
so that can withstand bitter, I think. It's not super.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I just thought people are going to play this thing. That is the baddest sounding EL34 amp I ever heard, and I'll be able to go.
Surprise, surprise.
That was my goal. There was just to be able to pull the rug out from under people.
That's so you. That's so
Yeah.
malcontent-y,
Yeah.
you know.
So why I said that is because I actually played with the load line and the transfer characteristic of the output transformer in order to get to be the KT88 and a 6550 actually works really well in the amp too, but to get them to behave more like an EL34 when you put the screws to it. That was the whole thing about that. It was like, I'm going to screw with people.
Yeah.
Why didn't you make it with the EL34? Because I didn't need to.
Right.
You know, the narrative at the time
Don't
was
you just feel
you're,
like-
you're so hung up on what an EL35 sounds like versus
Right.
what a 6L6 sounds like. I'm going to
Because
erase.
I want to say it has EL34s. You're like, would you just play it and listen, please?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just really wanted to lay waste to the whole cockeyed narrative.
But the funny thing about
That
you
doesn't hold
is you
any
will
water.
you're basically setting up the argument. Just so you can have it.
Cross that line. No,
Right.
like the Bugs Bunny. Cross that line. Okay, cross this line, and then
Totally.
and then and then Yosemite Sam keeps crossing the line until he falls off the cliff. You know, that's exactly what that's all about, guys. Sorry.
We might have talked about this, but it's worth saying because I think
Ever do a
talking
stereo
about-
type of power station so people can utilize the stereo effects to go left and right? I mean, yeah, you can do that. Here's the debate. Here's the internal debate in our side, which is, at what point are we going to make this amazing multi-layered Reuben sandwich that will satisfy you with every single thing?
That's
the
gonna be
mayonnaise,
expensive,
the mustard, the pickle, the onions, and
the Fryette Reuben sandwich.
the right kind of rye bread and all. How much are we? And then how much would you? How much would you pay to have your dream product that has the kitchen sink literally inside it with hot and cold running water?
What would we do? What would it be? The stereo and then rack switcher?
A stereo power amp with 2 reactive loads that you
Yeah.
can switch, with a built-in amp switcher, stereo effects loops, and
I like it actually.
and programmable presets on the reactive load switches. But the product doesn't increase in physical size or weight.
And then the boost function, like
Yeah.
the PS100.
Yeah, but keep it in the. It's got to stay in the same physical size and weight.
And
of
it
the
can't
product,
cost
and
$5,000.
it can't cost $5,000.
Yeah.
Well, you know, hey, dream on. So when we look at,
It's an awesome idea, Jim, I think.
here's
it sounds
the thing.
awesome.
What is the limit? The 2 most important limitations of the TAE, the Boss Waza?
The Waza, well, to me,
That it's got a solid state power amp,
yeah.
and that it's
And the
got
whole-
its own
it-
built-in effects
You're-
processing.
You're in the digital realm.
You're in the
entire
digital
time
realm
you're
the
in
whole
that
time,
unit.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've already got digital processors. You've already got reverb and delays and all these kinds of things that are probably better than the ones that are in there. But it's all together. It's just like the old. It's like
You
the
know-
portable TV that had the VCR built into it. You know,
Yeah.
it had all the stuff in it. But
Yeah.
the TV still works 30 years later. But the VCR part is long obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's the part of the TV that breaks the easiest and needs to be replaced, and it's not replaceable because it's obsolete. So we always have this internal debate about getting too zealous about the all-in-one products that try to combine 2 different philosophies of technology, which are the
much.
the long-term stability and reliability and excellence of behavior and familiarity of behavior of tube amplifiers with the short-term constant obsolescence of microprocessor-based
Are we ready?
stuff.
You ready to take off?
Yeah. So this is the Terramana Margarita with the
Dry curacao, and then
I think she did. I think you did this one with the.
no, it was a dry.
Oh, you.
curacao.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Oh.
That's very interesting because this tequila has a very transparent middle to it, and that translates to this. It's not belting you in the face at all.
You definitely can
nice,
taste that
bitter
there's
top
tequila
end.
there. It doesn't disappear
Right.
because that sort of that initial sort of sparkle on the top of the flavor is preserved.
Okay, this is funny. The second sip, I'm not tasting much alcohol, and I'm thinking, I will zip through this very fast and be on the floor.
Oh yeah.
With the quick fast. That's what this will do for
This
you.
this is the kind of
Right?
margarita that after 6 of them, you're like, Ossifer, how did I get here?
Yeah, right.
I was at home and then I
I'm
wasn't.
fired? What did I do? Your pants are off. What?
One side is a pink salt, then another side.
Oh.
Okay, I haven't had the pink salt yet. Okay.
We have pink Himalayan salt on one side of the glass, and the what is it called?
Tahini?
The tahine, the spicy
Whoa.
salt on the other side.
Whoa. The Himalayan pink Himalayan.
Pink Himalayan salt.
That's. Whoa. Which one did you start off with?
I think I started off right in the
Right
middle.
in the middle?
Yeah.
Man, you got the right EQ going.
This is dynamite. Dynamite.
Woo!
Mm.
This is delicious. Thank you.
This is probably one of the top margaritas that we've like come off with.
But it doesn't
Doesn't
scream
like a
margarita.
drink.
This is like a new drink to me.
It's almost like, you know what? It's almost like a kind of a
I usually use a half lemon and a half lime, so it's not 100% lime.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
This is just kind of like it's got a sort of a south of the border, more of a gimlet vibe.
I agree with that. And it's not like, margaritas, a lot of them tend to skew sweet.
Yeah,
This
not at
isn't
all.
doing that.
Not at all.
Yeah, this is
5 more of those, please.
good. Yeah, good shit. Good shit.
Stereotype of power station. I would love to do a thing like that has the right combination of features that actually will all age well together in the same product, and that was the short version of what I was trying to say earlier. Is the power station that you bought, the PS2 that you bought 5 years ago, is still going to be relevant and useful to you 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
If we put software in it, the software part of it will be obsolete in a much shorter period of time.
Yeah.
It'll be aced out by something with more memory, faster speed.
And that's the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I mean, even the PLIR with the IR loader in it,
Yeah.
it's built on a separate platform inside so that it can be removed and replaced with newer technology later on.
I didn't
Because
know that.
otherwise,
Actually, that's really cool
I mean,
to hear.
we have
That
one.
means you're like smarter than I thought you were.
We
Steve.
have one GPDI, our GP3 preamp in the shop that's been there for almost a year now, because it's got a really glitchy problem in it that really can't be resolved unless all of the microprocessor, and there's a thing called an FPGA in there. It's like a traffic controller. It's a 40-pin surface mount chip that has to be programmed after it's installed on the board. It has to be programmed live on the working unit after you fire it up the first time.
How many
And
of
it's
those did you ship?
Huh?
How many of those did you ship?
500.
And you had to do that each time?
Each one, that's part of getting it ready to go through QC was writing the FPGA,
Damn.
and of course burning, burning the EEPROM. So both the EEPROM and the FPGA in the GP3 are obsolete. So in order to fix this properly for this customer, we have to go get two obsolete chips and dig out an obsolete chip programmer using an obsolete chip program to rebuild the whole microprocessor
I
part
get it.
of that
So
thing.
you went, we're not doing this again.
And I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
I was really about ready to tell the customer, you know what, it's just not repairable. I was not willing to say we made an unrepairable product, even though it's 20 years old. It lasted 20 years. Everything else we make lasts 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, but you're still going, man, this thing is still a tank. I want it to work. I don't want it to be
Yeah, I don't
graveyard
want to
bound.
disappoint the
It doesn't
customer. I don't want to
yeah.
tell him it's undoable. It's not It's not undoable. It's just a circus to go through it for one unit, right?
Yeah.
If I knew that I was going to have to do 100 of them, then it would be okay. We would set up a jig.
Set up a little station and then get it done. Yeah.
Get a Windows 95 machine to
Yeah.
run the software. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
Because the computer technology is advancing too. So a lot of these old versions of these softwares don't work on the new platforms. So we threw away our last Windows 95 machine about 20 years ago. 10 years ago maybe. We kept them around and kept them around and kept them around. But in order to fix this thing, we're going to have to go through hoops. And I don't want to make another product like that. I want to make a product that we're going to be able to evolve the brain part of it on a separate module so that it can be updated in the future. So there's that. And also, if we go to that level, then you're going to say, okay, when are you going to put your own reverb and delays and stuff into it? Eventide and all these companies that have been doing that job great for decades, we're gonna like evolve into a company that develops.
Don't do it.
It's craziness. It's craziness. It's almost like we would have to go
I don't think
have an
anyone
interlocking agreement with another company.
Yeah.
You provide the software for it, and then if that company goes away, then
No one has ever come out of that kind of arrangement like smelling very good.
No.
Everyone who's ventured into that land, it doesn't last, it doesn't get built upon. It just becomes, oh, remember when they did that thing, when they ventured into that thing? And,
Well, look at the Ox. The Ox is like
Right.
all of a sudden discounted. All the dealers are discounting the Ox.
yeah.
And people are going, what's going to happen next? Are they going to come out with a new Ox? Is that why they're discounting? Well, if they come out with a new one, this is all the things, my list of all the things I want fixed. And you're like, exactly, that's the
But I think probably, I know this, that it's definitely close to top of list that the products that you guys manufacture, like you're not thinking about life cycle of a product. You're going, we build this thing, you're going to have it your entire life as long as you want.
the life cycle is how long you can live.
Yeah, there is no planned obsolescence here.
I'm going to answer this, and then I have a question.
All right.
The PS100s shipped with 6550s. They always ship with 6550s. We've never shipped one with KT88s. Why? They're too tall. They don't fit.
All right.
The only no, there isn't a KT88 that fits in the PS100. But it's a neutral enough sounding, and I say that knowing that somebody's going to go, oh, well, the PS100, the Power Station power amps are so neutral that they don't have any personality. I never said that. I said they tend to be more neutral sounding than a guitar power amp stage that is designed to really color the sound.
Yeah.
That's kind of in between power amp section in a head coloration and solid state power amp that is completely transparent and adds nothing, subtracts nothing.
Well, I think this is why
It's kind of in the middle.
BHD and your rack power amps kind of blew the doors off everyone, was you found the balance.
Well, that was and that was entirely
then.
accidental because
You
I
knew what
kept-
you were after.
all right.
You didn't want to, we've talked about this. You didn't want to build a Marshall power, a stereo Marshall power amp for racks,
Dig this.
right?
The first guitar amp I made had a Dynaco power amp in it.
Oh.
Reason? Because I had built a
Wait, tell them
Dynaco.
what a Dynaco.
I had built
is.
a Dynaco. Oh, I will. I
Okay.
had built a Dynaco power amp for my home stereo system because I was a little 13 to 15-year-old hi-fi geek. I was
Yeah.
learning that at that time. Dynaco is a company that made not cheap, but affordable, efficient designs of high-quality audio products for home hi-fi systems for enthusiasts who wanted to build their own stuff. That's how they made it more affordable, less expensive to buy. You assemble it, and they had really good assembly instructions and good quality transformers, good quality components, nice quality chassis parts and stuff like that. But it wasn't like super flashy, 1-inch thick machined aluminum front panels and all this kind of, and gold connectors and all. None of that stuff. It was strictly, they were kind of like the Volkswagen of hi-fi. And
Honda Civic.
And I had built a system, a stereo system for myself using those components, and I bought a Dynaco power amp. And so the first time I tried to make a guitar amp, I just built a little Fender preamp and plugged it into a Dynaco power amp, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. Well, the first time I opened a Sunn 200S, I went,
I remember you talking about this. That's it.
That's a Marshall
I know
preamp.
this.
That's
Yeah.
a Marshall preamp in front of a Dynaco power amp. It even had the Dynaco logo stamped on the transformers. These guys were buying the kits from Dynaco
Hot damn.
and putting them on a different chassis with a guitar preamp and putting it in a head shell with vinyl on it and saying, "New amplifier company." Great. Well, in '68, Hendrix is touring on the West Coast, and he's having a bear of a time because Fender is providing amplifiers for this part of the tour, and he's blowing them up right and left. We've all
Hey,
seen.
do you remember who hooked that up? Like, did Sunn contact Hendrix's management?
Sunn
his management
contacted Hendrix's management, and they sent a rep to one of Hendrix's shows.
I think it was here.
Forum. I believe it was at the Forum.
Yeah.
Actually, they had played the night before at the Anaheim Convention Center, and they were blowing up their shit all over the place, and they were using Fenders.
Which, interesting, right?
And Fenders had JBLs, and JBLs were Alnico speakers that really didn't have that much power handling capacity, and they were subject to being overloaded, and they would come apart. So, the Sunn rep thought, okay, this is going to be our golden opportunity. We have an opportunity to get Sunn amps on Hendrix's stage at soundcheck, and we're going to get him to play through them. And the first thing he does is he turns the knob all the way to 10. And the guitar tech is going, they're not going up to 10 enough. So the guitar tech, there's somebody on Facebook right now that's got a lot of photographs and a lot of backstory stuff that you hadn't really read much of in the past, where they're describing this interaction between the guitar tech on the tour and the Sunn rep and the Sunn tech.
Is this that little blurb you sent me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, and
I knew about this because it was actually in the first, a little bit of it was in the first Hendrix biography, the Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky by David Henderson.
it wasn't really as detailed as this.
No, but I did know, Sunn came in and kind of didn't,
So dig this, all right? I'm going to read this to you. All right. So
Yeah, there it is.
the Experience arrived in Los Angeles for 2 shows at the Anaheim Convention Center. The Animals,
Los
Air
Angeles.
Apparent, and Soft Machine are also on the bill. Stage and sound equipment were still primitive during this area, and the group was dogged by various technical problems at nearly every venue. This is what bands were
That's
going
what it
through.
was.
Now, when I saw Hendrix at the Seattle Arena, and they had
The Fudge was opening for
the
him?
Fudge was opening for them.
That was that rotating stage?
The rotating stage, the PA was blowing up all the time.
By the way, Hendrix produced that Heir Apparent record.
So I heard, yeah. So Neville Chesters, the roadie, says, quote, "A lot of trouble with gear. Some guys from Sunn Amplifiers at the show talked to Chaz Chandler. All right. The amplifiers broke down during the first show, resulting in only 4 numbers. This is the Fender amplifiers.
Whoa.
resulting in only 4 numbers being played during the second show.
Whoa.
Hendrix got 4 numbers out, and then they had to walk
Could you
off.
imagine that?
Now, when I was at the arena show with the Fudge had to stop their show twice because they blew out all the drivers in the PA system. The PA system was the horns and drivers that were used for the basketball games, and they were just blowing the drivers out of the horns because they were trying to fill up a whole auditorium with sound coming through university horns and drivers.
Yeah.
It was impossible.
Wow.
And the amplifiers had to be loud enough to get over the vocals, which were only coming through the PA system. They weren't micing the amps. You didn't mic the amps. The PA system wouldn't handle it.
Right.
So the amps had to be loud and clean. So, the amplifiers broke down during the first show, resulting in only 4 numbers being played during the second show. After the show, Chaz and Jimmy were approached by Buck Munger, representative for Sunn Amplification, who
Write that
replaced
one
their
down.
Fender gear
That's my new alias.
with brand new Sunn gear, all right? As Sunn's artist relations man, it was up to Buck Munger to, quote, see in, unquote, the new equipment with the experience in the hope of getting a contract signed. Like I said on a previous show, or a show before this, they were trying to get the experience to buy in. They weren't going to underwrite the tour. You buy this gear from us.
That was a serious, not genesis, but that was the early days of trying to figure this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
It was, no, we are the company, so you will bow down to us, rather than, wait a minute, we need to serve you, which actually...
We'll work with you, we'll repair the gear,
yeah.
we'll do all the maintenance, we'll advise you
But
on
you
how
will
to use this
play
stuff.
what we built,
You will play what
and
we
you will be
built.
happy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we make better stuff than Marshall.
And
We looked
Jimmy's
at that
like-
Marshall stuff and like, man, those are accidents waiting to happen. That's antiquated shit. This is the modern new blah, blah, blah. Well,
It sounds like shit.
okay. And we had mentioned in the previous show we were talking about Sunn, the band.
Yeah.
And one of you guys mentioned the Sunn Solaris, which was a variation of the 200S, which was a variation of the 2000S. The Solaris, I think, had reverb or something like that, and the
So
200S didn't. But the 200S was the amp that had a basic Fender preamp or Marshall preamp. I think it was Fender or some combination, some amalgam of the two, driving a Dynaco Mark II power amp, which was two 6550s. That was the 100-watt one. No, that was the 60-watt one because they ran two 6550s in ultralinear mode, which is only 60% of the power possible
remember you talking about that.
out of running it in normal Class AB mode. So the 200S was the 60-watt amp, and the 2000S was the double of that, the 120-watt version, which was 2 Dynaco power amp circuits on one chassis with bigger output transformers. and
What
power
model
transformers.
what was Hendrix experimenting with?
These were the 200Ss and the
The
2000Ss.
200Ss. And so what does the band Sunn use? What do they prefer?
They're using the Model Ts, which came later.
Okay.
Which were a completely evolved design. The first Model T was a Marshall front end plugged into a new power amp design that they came up with that was also ultralinear, but with 4 KT88s or 4 6550s. So it was still 120 watts. Anyway, so this is the best part. As Sunn's artist relations man, it was up to Buck Munger to see in the new equipment with the experience and the hope of getting a contract signed. As soon as Jimmy got all this equipment, he went directly to the volume and turned it all the way up to 10.
Hell yeah, he did.
We assumed that maybe a third or 2/3 of the power is the maximum ever going to be required. We, the company, assumed that you only need a third of the power that these amplifiers can produce. They're thinking in terms of power. How much power do 4 of these amps need to put out for a guitar player to play loud enough to play clean in an auditorium? With a PA system that's on a good day is 200 watts per channel if it's a stereo PA system. and most of them weren't. They were mono with a big desk. So they maybe had 2 or 4 100-watt power amps running a bank of drivers and horns, or maybe some Altec A7s, which were also very low efficiency and very relatively low powered. 115 and a horn. Those things were good for 120 watts on a good day, and they usually blew when you really pounded them. And anyway, so we assumed that maybe a third or 2/3 of the power is the maximum ever going to need to be required. They didn't know about distortion.
Right.
But because of the approach that Jimmy had to his thing, I'm in the middle. I, the roadie, am in the middle talking to the engineer at Sunn on the phone in Oregon, who's saying, nobody does that.
The hell?
Tell him not to do that.
Oh, okay, you're fired.
And the roadie is saying to engineer at Sunn, you tell him not to do that.
All right. Get stuffed.
Okay, here is a completely unconnected engineer's response to that circumstance. Here we are. This is so great. What the engineers at Sunn did was to recalibrate the gear so that when Jimmy turned the amp up to 10, he was in fact only getting 2/3 power.
Yeah.
All right.
They're going to treat him like, this guy's an idiot.
This is the equivalent of loosening the set screw on the knob and resetting it so that when you turn it up to 10, it's actually overland to 7.
No, they put an 11 on there.
Yeah. They put a voltage divider on the gain control so that if you turned it up to 10, it would still only be up to about 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Like those dummy guitar players, they won't know the difference. They won't get it.
Yeah, he's not listening. He just wants it to
look
like it's loud.
This is a guy who is completely upending the whole concept of the guitar and amp as an instrument. And he's so many light years ahead of this engineer in Oregon that they just think, he's crazy. Nobody does that.
Right.
And so the way this story ends is pretty good because it really speaks to the concept of a manufacturer, a designer, a company that gives a shit about the musical direction of an artist.
That came later.
Versus somebody that engineers shit by committee and is clueless.
You know what's interesting?
And dares to tell an artist, you don't use our gear that way. I'm like, knock yourself out. I want you to bring that thing back in flames and show me what you did.
Right. Well, Jimmy was dealing with like the amp manufacturers were conglomerates, but Roger Mayer was his boy.
Yeah.
One dude who's like,
I get it.
Yeah, let me make you something.
Yeah.
Let me make it.
Yeah.
Okay, try this out. What do you think?
Yeah, give me some
What
feedback.
do we? Yeah.
What do I need to do to help you on your journey?
Right.
Not, hey, dumb
That's
kid.
a partnership.
Hey, dumb kid, I'm the engineer.
You're using it wrong.
I went to school.
Right.
I'm schooled. I got an EE.
Right.
There was a great.
He's like, have you heard EXP?
There was a great review of the Queen record when they came out with the "We Will Rock You."
Yeah.
And the reviewer was all offended by Queen. He was like, they were so arrogant and they were like Nazis. They're telling us,
because we're gonna rock you.
yeah,
Oh my
you
God.
will not rock us. We will rock you. This guy really took huge offense to that song, and I was cracking up. Anyway, that's what this
funny.
is. So what the engineers at Sunn did was recalibrate the gear so that when Jimmy turned it up to 10, he was in fact only get 2/3 power, but the sound was clean and undistorted, so Jimmy knew straight away that something was up. I'm sorry, I'm getting wound up because I love this stuff. As soon as he sussed this out, it was the beginning of the end of the relationship with Sunn. He was going, these guys are.
They think I'm an idiot.
These guys are going to be an albatross if I'm going to deal with them. I've already got enough problems.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do a national tour, doing 4 tabs of acid a night, with a bunch of people all hanging around, trying to give me even better acid than I already got, and I already got the best. And I got to talk to knuckleheads like this. And Noel was happy with the sound. Of course he was. He's got a bigger pickup with hotter output, and he needs it to be cleaner because, like you said,
Yeah.
he was playing it. His sound was the sound of a bass being played into a bowl of cream of wheat. I mean,
Hey, that's better than whatever I said.
but
yeah,
Jimmy,
it's true.
But they're already in the tour, and they do find an application for this gear. Jimmy relegated the gear to a monitor
Side fills.
system
Yeah!
and eventually went back to using Marshalls.
Yeah.
But the promise of new gear after the Anaheim fiasco cooled Jimmy out, and the next day he was in a much better mood. In other words, okay, we'll try to figure out how to do it your way, and let's just try to resuscitate the relationship. And of course, during the course of that year, you see a variety of shows where he's out there using a variety of stuff, and you do see Sunn gear on the stage. But there's also a Marshall, and there's a Sound City, and there's a this and that, and
Fender stuff.
and that big long rant. And I know you guys love the rants because I read that you love the rants. So I appreciate that you love the rants. That all goes back to the Dynaco thing, which was goes back to the transparency of the power station thing. See, I do actually think about what I'm saying. The power station power amp section is a tube power amplifier, and the key to the behavior of the power station is that it is a tube power amplifier, and that's what causes it to react with a guitar speaker cabinet the way your amp does. And that's what's important about it. And a solid state power amp doesn't do that.
Right.
And a Class D power amp doesn't do that. They aren't designed to do that. Now, if you've got, if you're in a situation where it's 1979 and all this technology isn't developed yet, and all the understanding about the proclivities of these different pieces of gear that you're using aren't fully understood yet, then you're just trying to band-aid this stuff together to make it work. And one of the ways that Eddie did that, for example, was figuring out how to make an amp distort more but make it controllable and stuff. And so when he actually evolved his rig to the point where he's variacing amps but touring with 4 power tubes, and the amp is still kind of flubby on the bottom end, and it's still only putting out like maybe 35 watts or something, where the studio version of the amp that only had 2 6CA7s in it was running at about 18 watts, and if you really put the screws to it, it's kind of flubby. In the studio, you can correct for that. You can mix around that. You can deal with that. On tour, it's a little more difficult. On the tour, he was using 4 6CA7s in his amps, Variac anywhere between 60 and 90 volts, depending on the mood and all that, which would be a useless amplifier on a stage playing that loud. But they're slaving them into load resistors and then running them into H&H power amps, which are solid-state power amps, which are very stiff and tight. Talk about tight and dry, running into 412 cabinets, and they're like, oh, they're using those 800-watt H&H power amps. Well, the V400 only put out 400 watts, I think. It was the V800, V4. Those amplifiers only put out that much power at 4 ohms, but they're running 16 ohm cabs with them, and he's got multiples of them. So it's not like he's running 4 16 ohm cabs on one H&H power amp. He's running 2 cabinets per channel, which is 8, so that 400 power amp is now 180 watts, maybe on a good day, but it's a stiffer, tighter power amp, so it's tightening up the cabs because the amp, Variac way down, is so sloppy, it's unusable. So the power amps, the solid-state power amps in that environment are kind of correcting for the excesses of the amp, Variac way down.
Yeah.
These days, we've got, and also the load resistors that he was using were load resistors. He was loading the amps down into load resistors. They weren't reactive loads. They especially weren't the sophisticated reactive loads we have today. So that's what you did. You overcompensated in one aspect and then corrected it with another piece of gear that would give you back some...
Yeah, and that rack
aspect
thing happened later on, you know,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
There's really interesting quote long quote from Eddie talking about kind of running into using the Variac. I can read it to you.
Thanks, Carlos. You're the guy that asked about the veins, aren't you? Anyway, so I'm glad. I hope that was you and that I answered your question. Everyone, where's the B? Absolutely, graphite and cigars. Kelly B, we were talking about Hendrix. Yeah, he had a sound. He did have a Sound City. He used the Sound City together with the Marshall. So Hendrix did not gig with the high watt, but he gigged with the proto high watt, which was the Sound City 100. And there's a previous show that was dedicated to that, so go look at that up. And he gave some of his sons to Leslie West, and Leslie West used a distortion pedal to get his distortion. He wasn't about cranking power amps. He wanted clean power amps, and they used their WEM amps were basically clean power amps, and they used 2 15 cabs with JBLs in it. Woo! What has more impact on the tone of a Marshall SLP, an output transformer or a power transformer? Okay. I want to impress upon you guys the importance, and ladies, Amanda, I hope you're still here. I'm not seeing any Amanda rants, and I'm missing that. Avoid falling into the trap of trying to isolate a personality to a specific component. Everything works together the way they do because that's the way they work together. Sometimes it's kismet, accidental. Sometimes it's intentional, but you don't take one isolated element out of a system and say this is the key component. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in amps. It doesn't work that way in cars. It doesn't work in that. Which blender should I have bought to save my marriage? It just doesn't work that way, right? I went right over your head, didn't I?
What do you mean?
You didn't get my You didn't get my analogy. Which blender should I have bought to save my marriage? Never mind. Okay, I'm inhaling my own gases now. I can tell by the expression on Joe's face. Fine. We should be playing anyway. This is getting obnoxious.
Well,
why we got together was we did this video where we wanted to show you how the Variac factors into getting a Marshall to behave the way you want it to behave to get more distortion. This was an evolution of overdrive sound, an early evolution. And as we learned, it couldn't be the end all for the very reason is that you didn't have ultimate control over the volume output of the amplifier.
Right.
You're hammered, aren't you? I can tell by you guys are cross, dude.
Stone sober.
Ossifer. Any okay, he's drilling a hole in the side of my forehead right now. Okay, good. Let's just start smoking pot and get it over with. Any update when you might be sending more 292s to AMS? I ordered in early January. Yeah, we just completed a bunch of them. So I believe they start shipping next week. And I'm not saying another word until I get another one of those really awesome margaritas that we just had, because that was killing.
Those were absolutely amazing.
So
let me back you up here for a second. You came up with this idea that you wanted to talk about Variac King, right? Where did that come from?
It came from the realization that way back in my attempt to start being a guitar player after having been a drummer, and B, navigating the problem of having transitioning from a 50 watt amp that was pretty much working for me, but just not quite loud enough, to a 100 watt high watt, which was way not working for me and way too damn loud. that I knew enough about electronics to know that the little thing, the little plug in the back that you unplug and turn it, a quarter turn and plug it back in, would change the voltage of the amplifier. And I knew that running a 240 watt amp at 120 volts would not hurt the amplifier, but it would be interesting to find out what it did do.
Yeah.
So I pulled it out of the 120 volt mode and turned it and plugged it into the 240 volt mode and played through it and went, this has got this nice cranked little, I had a little National 5 watt amp.
See,
And
this
when
is
you turn
crazy.
it all the way up and it just kind of went, wah! And the high watt started to do that at 240 volts. So I went, okay, I got this really great sound now. And there was this band, a local Seattle band that was auditioning guitar players, and I went down to the audition with my 100 watt high watt set to 240 volts,
So you're like, I got the sound.
I got the sound. So I played. They asked me just to play a couple of songs by myself, which I did, and they wanted to hear how I kind of played, and I'd learned one or two of their songs, so I kind of play them by myself, a cappella on electric guitar.
That's
through
interesting.
the amp. And they're like going, okay, that sounds pretty good. Okay, let's do it with the band.
Uh-huh.
The band starts playing. I disappear. There's nothing I can do about it. There's no amount of right-hand sweep I can turn on this amp that gives it loud enough. And then I went like, and they're going, can you turn it up? We can't hear you. And I'm like thinking, oh, shit. The only
I'm
thing
about to blow this room
I'm
up.
about to blow the audition, so I unplugged the thing and set it to 120 volts and play the first chord, and they're like going, yeah, now could you turn it down and get that same tone? No. And I walked away from the audition. They were like, okay, you're like some green kid that has some kind of weird technology that we don't understand and don't want to. We're not here to like help
This
you
is
along.
bananas that you're saying this.
So
I'm going to read you this Ed quote after you finish this.
So I go down to this. I said this in the video that Joe released yesterday. And great job on the video, by the way. I was sure that you were going to cut out the parts where I was completely stumbling over my words. And
No, those were good.
And
Those
I
were
wasn't even
great.
So he keeps all the me blathering along and stumbling over.
No. I actually get
English
rid
language.
of
Yeah, so
you
anyway,
don't know what I leave.
yeah.
No, those had character. Those were fun.
There was a funky little electronic shop. It wasn't really an electronic shop. It was a junk store on First Avenue in Seattle, on Skid Row, in the early days, called Standard Electronics, and it was basically just a junk store. The guy had boxes and boxes of old radio parts, old electronic parts. It was the kind of place where your
How
dad...
often did you go in there?
Every weekend.
Oh, man.
Every Saturday.
You really were a
Every
geek.
Saturday, get on the bus, go downtown, spend an hour at Standard.
See,
And-
kids, this is how you wind up being an
But this,
amplifier guy.
it wasn't about the shop so much. It was about the guy that ran it. He was this curmudgeonly old guy. He probably wasn't that old. It just seemed old to me because
Sure.
I was 16.
Yeah, he's
15.
probably in his 50s, and you're like,
Yeah.
he's 300 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he seemed to have all this innate knowledge. And even if it wasn't really that deep, it was more than I knew. And he was willing to share it with me.
Oh, how
He
cool.
was very generous about that. And he would tell me something when I would be kind of like starting to dig my way through a concept. He would go, you kind of got the right idea, kid. You just need to here's how much farther you have to go in the logic, and then you pretty much got it.
Was he sort of a mentor?
Yeah. He was
Wow.
Like, you're kind of smart for a little whippersnapper. Yeah. And he says, okay, here's what you need to do. And he goes in, he digs through some shit, and he finds this power supply. He take this home and figure out how this works. I go, well, how do I figure it out? He goes, you'll figure it out. So it turned out to be this little standalone 450 volt power supply that used tube rectifiers. So that was my entree into power supplies and tube rectifiers. And as I went, sort of figured that out.
How cool.
Went down to the library, checked out a library book. After spending 2 hours at the library, 3 hours looking through books, I went, oh, this is kind of describing what, So he kind of edged me along.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went down there one day, and I said, here's what happened. And I explained to him this whole thing. And I said, is there something kind of in between what I was trying to accomplish and what I was having the problem with? Is there some way to get in between that? And he goes, oh, sounds to me like you want a Variac. And I'm like, very what? And he pulls out this thing with a big, cool-looking bitchin' Bakelite knob on the top of it.
Oh, cool! Even cooler.
And a little dial with demarcations of voltage and stuff. And at that point, I didn't give a shit what it did. It just was so cool looking because of the big knob and the dial. All I needed was the knob and the dial. Huh? I bought it.
How much?
Oh, it's like, what, $3? I mean,
wow!
This is like my paper route money.
This is so cool.
But he also, if I bought something that I couldn't use, he would let me bring it back and apply part of that purchase of that to something else.
Oh, man.
Because I went down there every week. And every time I went down there, I'd bring down another one of my buddies. And they would like go... Every once in a while, I'd bring somebody down, and they go, oh, this place is cool, and they start spending money, and they go, this place smells funny. Yeah, smells like bugs.
Like old guys.
Yeah. Old guys, 13-year-old old guys.
Yeah.
Right? They existed.
Right.
My parents were like, go out and learn shit on your own, kid. Other kids were like, their parents were like, you do it my way or the highway.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but I know enough about your dad to know the ethos that was happening in your household, and it was like
he was
educate yourself.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's everything I know.
Get your butt out of bed, get out of the house, go breathe some oxygen.
Here's a book, crack it.
Yeah. And here's $2. Get on a bus, and Mom's like, should you go downtown with me? What's he gonna do? Mm-hmm. And so I go down, and I get a Variac, and I bring it back, and I'm like doing this, and like, oh, well, about that time, the Sunn Model T had come out, and it kind of started to have an overdrive sound. And I thought, well...
Okay, define it. It kind of started to have an overdrive
Well, I mean,
sound.
Again, here's my reference.
Did it have a preamp?
I
don't know this amp.
Here's my reference.
Yeah.
A 5-watt National amp with an 8-inch speaker in it.
Okay.
A car speaker, basically.
Okay.
I'm kind of want the big thing to do what the little thing does, only bigger.
But that's what Ed was doing.
Yeah, right. So I thought, well, maybe the Sunn is going to supplant the high watt, and I used it at rehearsal a couple of times, and it just didn't cut it. It didn't have that sonic impact that the high watt did.
Yeah.
It had the little fuzzy thing, Mm-hmm. It was like going in the right direction, but it wasn't doing it enough. Yeah. And so I worked at the place that was selling them, so I was able to borrow it, try it out for a week, and take it back and not be the worse for wear. And I went back to my high watt, and then the rest is history. I struggled with that until I ended up figuring out my way through that whole puzzle by starting my own company, and here I am, completely brain dead and damaged. But that was my entree into this thing about the voltage thing. So when I first encountered that Eddie was variacing the amp, then I went, yeah, I totally get where you're going with that.
Well, he had virtually the same thing, same experience as you.
I wasn't aware of that until you brought it up to me.
Well, okay, so I'm going to read this. He says, I used to work at a music store delivering pianos and organs, which was in Pasadena, right? And one day a Marshall amp comes in, and I'd only seen pictures of these. And by the way, that was the house amp at the Rose Palace, which they build the New Year's Day floats in there now.
Oh, yeah?
But it was a live concert venue for a couple years at the end of the 60s. And Led Zeppelin played their first U.S. show in L.A. there. And it's interesting because I found a picture, and like I've always been curious about that. Like, do you think Jimmy Page like played through that damn amp that day, and then it wound up being Ed's number one?
Wow,
You know what I
that's
mean?
a concept.
Yeah. So anyway,
See, the more we peel back the layers, the more we find like these
it's
unusual
pretty
sort of connections.
bananas. So he says one day this Marshall comes in, and I'd only seen pictures of these. Only Eric Clapton and Gods play these. He said, I got to have that amp. So I worked all summer to buy the amp, and then we were already too loud as it was, and now I had a 100-watt Marshall. It was so damn loud I did everything from facing it backwards to facing it down to the floor, and it was just too damn loud. So I saw an ad in the paper for another Marshall amp and thought, well, maybe this one will be different. Well, it certainly was, because when it showed up, I plugged it in and it didn't work. But I left it on, and what I didn't realize was this thing was from England, and it was 220. And I plugged it in, and I didn't look at the back to see that it was set on 220. And it took a long time for it to warm up at half voltage. And when I picked up my guitar, I was like, this sounds incredible, but incredibly quiet. Right? So he says, it dawned on me. I could control the volume of the amp with the voltage. So I proceeded to hook it up into the light dimmer of the house. And it blew out and so on. So I finally went to this place called Dial Radio. And I asked, do you have any kind of thing like an industrial variable voltage transformer that I can use like a light dimmer? And he said, yeah. I got this thing called a Variac.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly like you. I said, okay, cool. And I'd take it home, plug the amp into it, and I'd lower the voltage from like 110 slowly down to 100. And then the lowest I ever went was like 60, depending on the room we were playing in. And I'd set it anywhere between 60 and 100, because the only way the amp sounded good was with everything all the way up.
Right.
So that became my volume knob. If we were playing little bars, I'd set it to 60 volts. Somewhere a little bit bigger, I'd crank it to 80. And for recording, the sweet spot seemed to be 89 volts.
89.
And we were talking about the 9
Yeah.
at the shop, 90 at the shop.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It's-
You guys had the identical experience.
It's just like it. Well, it's evolution,
Yeah.
and then you just sort of like get it dropped in your lap, and everybody gets that stuff dropped in their lap, and then every once in a while somebody goes, "Oh, something just got dropped in my lap." That actually, you do that.
Yeah.
Was not out of any particular brilliance or anything. Just it's the right day at the right time, being in the right place, the right person, going. Oh.
Well, it sort of makes sense, because these tools were being made for, Hendrix, Pete Townsend, like people
And
who
they
were
were
playing
being-
really large venues, right?
And they were being designed to play. They weren't trying to make them sound a certain way.
Right.
They were trying to make them loud enough to play in the venues.
Exactly.
Because the PAs weren't up to it yet.
So then the up and coming, local kids are like, well, I want to use what my hero uses.
Mm-hmm.
He uses a 1959 Marshall 100.
And oh my God,
right?
what is he doing to make it sound like that? Because there's
But-
nothing. I can't even remotely get it to do that.
But he's not playing the Forum.
Right.
He's playing a backyard party with this thing. Well, what the hell do I do with this? Or, a high school dance. So then it's like, okay, well, I have this thing that my hero uses, but I can't really use it. And then your wheels start turning. And then you wind up at Dial Radio going, do you have a thing? And then you get, the old wizard
When
going,
you do this, it does this.
I have this little thing called a Variac. And that's like the next little piece of evolution.
Yeah, the guy at Standard Radio, I think he even wore a shirt. It had one of those sort of olive green or those army green shirts with his monogram on it, his name Stan or something like that on it.
That's the best. I love it.
I love that. You know what I loved about this place? I love the smell of it.
Yeah.
Hardwood floors, all these boxes where it was the smell of varnish, the smell of old wax capacitors,
Transformers that had broken in.
In those days, the transformers were cured with
Lacquer, right?
varnish and oil based.
Such a great smell.
The stuff that's like all illegal now because of pollution. That was just the smell.
Yeah.
I went in there just.
I'm home.
I'm in the right place.
Right.
I don't know what I'm going to learn today, but it's probably going to be something that's going to be good for me later.
Yeah.
I'll figure out a way to make it.
That's so cool. Man.
Yeah. So we did the video, Joe released a video. Some of you guys have watched it and checked it out. And the salient thing about it in the video sounds like these are different approaches to arrive at these kind of sounds.
Right.
So we thought, okay, as we said in the video, well, let's drag this to the Malcontents studio and show that.
Yes.
Well, we plug it all in here. We set it up with a Variac and set it to 90 volts.
The same problem you had in
It's
1973.
unplayable in
yeah.
here. Absolutely unplayable.
And
It
we
is-
just laughed. We thought, well, let's just listen and see.
No.
Woo!
We look at the mixer
Yeah.
and everything is pinned. You know, it's just like, no, this is not going to
Yeah.
fly. So, but you could discern the difference in the sonic behavior between attenuating it down with the power station and turning down the Variac from 120 volts to 90 volts. And the salient thing that we experience from that is just it's the in that environment using the power station to control the overall volume so that it's tolerable at any setting of the Variac. And what we said in the video was that with the Variac, with the power station, with what was that that aftermarket voltage regulator thing, power scaling.
Oh, yeah,
each
yeah.
one of these things are some means to an end.
Hey, what was power scaling?
Power
Can you
scaling was
define
that was the one where I described the
I remember you were yeah.
high voltage regulator circuit that
That's
you
what
could
that
set
was. Okay.
to run the power tubes or the phase inverter or the preamp tubes or all of the above, depending on how you wired it into your amp. You could set the voltage to where you thought the sweet spot was.
London Power did the power
There,
scaling
right,
kit.
right. And a few companies licensed it to put in their amps. The problem with it
Hey, do you
is
mind if I
that
run?
the problem with it is that it is regulated. And by dint of being regulated, it means it isn't responsive to the playing dynamic when you're hitting on the amp. So that would just like set the voltage at 253, 354, whatever it was, it would sit right there. It wouldn't dynamically fluctuate with your playing attack. And that would be the problem with that. And each one of these solutions is not an end in itself. It's just kind of a partial solution. Same with the Variac thing. The idea would be to get the amp to misbehave the way that you want it to misbehave. Get the right blend of preamp distortion, phase inverter distortion, output stage distortion. And with each of these different methods, you would set the controls a certain way and use a certain kind of guitar and have a particular style and use whatever speakers, high efficiency, low efficiency, to arrive at the balance that works for you. And so we were playing around with using this particular amp, which is an extremely nice example of a bone stock. A friend of mine just recently bought this. This is like a one-owner amp. He bought it from the original owner who passed away. He bought it from a person who was managing the guy's estate. So the seller wasn't a guitar player. The seller was selling it for the original owner who had passed away for the estate. So a one-owner 1971 JMP, untouched inside by human hands. Original filter caps, we checked them out. They're all perfect. The original speakers, and this straight 412 cabinet with the greenbacks. He's got the slant cabinet. He bought the whole stack, and so he's got the whole rig. We just brought the straight cab over to do this, but it hadn't really been beaten up or played very hard, so it wasn't anything that we were worried about doing experiments with it, messing with it, and trying different things, because it didn't live a hard life. It led a very pampered life. There aren't even any scratches on the vinyl. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so we Variac'd it down in that video and played it and you could hear it, but we have the benefit of being in an environment where you could blast and take advantage of the iPhone compression to keep it from overdriving. In here, no such luck. It was even Variac down to 90 volts. It was so loud we couldn't even turn the volume up, and it was so noisy.
We just started laughing.
So what we're doing actually is we're setting the Variac between 90 and 120 volts, but we have it going through a PS2 into the 412 cab so that we don't blow out the mics. And the end result is you actually can discern the difference between variacing the amp and the kind of saturation that occurs in the preamp stages and the phase inverter stage, but not necessarily in the power amp stage because it's not working that hard, and turning it up to 120 so that the preamps and phase inverter are pushing the power amp stage, and that energy is being ameliorated by the behavior of the power station. So you get to hear what really the benefit of the Variac was and why it didn't become the end-all be-all solution to getting the amp thing at the right level, because it wasn't a total solution. It was the right solution at the right time.
It's interesting. Jay-Z's on here, and he's saying he's got the old Van Halen Omite Variac, which that's interesting because we were talking about. I'll bet some people know the brand that he used, and like, let's get the Eddie Variac.
It's 12 gauge copper wire with a contact selector on it, and an insulating substrate that holds that wire. That's it. It's copper wire. Whether it's branded Omite or God's given tone to man or whatever the hell you want to call it, it's still coils of wire wrapped around an insulator with a little contact that touches each coil winding at a specific point. So the brand is irrelevant. The behavior is only relevant to the extent that you want to get one. If you want to try using it, you want to get one that will safely handle the output current, the current draw of the amp that you're using with. So you're going to use a 1,000-watt one.
I'm curious, John, if you're still on. Did you ever go through a period where you were kind of using that as a part of your rig? Were you ever like going out to gigs with the Variac? And which head did you use that with, and how long did you do that before you probably went, all right, this is just a
yeah, well, see, that's the whole thing. It's just like once you enter that exercise, and we did this, once you embark on that exercise, you immediately run up against all the pitfalls of going there. And so you're reinventing the wheel. You're going through the whole thing. Load resistor, power amps, to reamp, blah, 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 blah. The bottom end. And we went through all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're gonna reinvent the wheel at that point.
But, John, did you ever use it as part of your rig? Like actually gigging with it? Or was it kind of something to like goof around with at home or maybe in the studio or something? I'm wondering.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. But really, at the end of the day, even with an attenuator, we're reinventing the wheel a little bit. We just refined the wheel a little bit.
Yeah.
We came up with a little better version of the wheel.
But I didn't know.
It's titanium instead of aluminum.
I didn't know until we did that video the other day that you're really kind of concentrating where the saturation happens with these different approaches. I had no idea.
Front end, whether
kind
it's
of the
phase
middle,
inverter,
the phase inverter.
Whether it's the output stage, whether it's the output transformer, how much load you're putting in the power transformer. You're basically assigning which part of the heart of the amplifier that you're trying to maximize that effect out of. And then what you ultimately realize is, well, you need to be able to ratio every single stage. And what's the best way to do that? To have an amp that has more gain than like a stock Marshall, and a gain control that will control that, going into a master volume, which is 1959
Yeah, the
doesn't have.
1959, yeah.
So you need a massive volume to not just to get distortion, but to meter how much of the preamp distortion you want relative to power amp distortion, and then another way to meter how much of that output stage distortion is transferred to the speaker, which is too much, and so that's where the attenuator comes in.
Yeah.
And that really, those three things are really the ultimate solution. The attenuator, I'm sorry, and I did this a lot in that video, by the way.
I know you did, but I thought you kind of meant power attenuator, which it can work that way.
That's right.
So I
right.
thought that's what you meant.
I kept conflating those two, but the point was an attenuator that really does its job right would be the right solution to get all those other pieces to line up like the little soldiers that you need them to be in order to get to that end result. And that was, to me, that was like, okay, we've explored that. We've gone through that from beginning to end, and great. But at the end of the day, these are the parameters that you need control of. The preamp gain, the level of preamp output going into the power amp stage, of which the phase inverter is part, and then the output power that the amplifier is producing down to the level that you want to drive the speaker at to where it's manageable.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay, John. Thanks for chiming in. Yeah, I've kind of wondered if you'd ever brought it out and kind of, hauled out that stuff.
Yeah, because once you haul it out to a gig, you immediately run into like the 19 reasons this isn't workable.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a pain in the ass. It's a bunch of gear. It's entirely dependent on the voltage conditions at the gig that you're playing at. And if you've played 15 different gigs, and you know that you've played in 15 different places that are all violating electrical code and cannot be relied on. And then, of course, you're going to play the gig where when they bring the lights down and you go on a stage, all of a sudden you can't hear yourself anymore because all the stage power is on the same circuit as the dimmer for the light system.
Playing a Mesa Mark IV. And I know you know what that means. Like,
it's a jungle out there.
Oh, man. A Mesa Mark IV in a bad power environment is nasty. But, John was coming along later. He wasn't trying to figure that tone thing out in 1975, 76, He had some other tools at his disposal. Yeah, that's true. Didn't want to sound like Ed. That makes sense. But you wanted to mess with it, right? And just see. Get a little of that pollen on you.
Pull up this Rewind Electric, and we'll answer this. The really simple, dead nuts, simple answer.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, Rewind Electric. Can a Variac act like a choke or adding a voltage sag if you're loading it hard? It won't act like a choke. It will introduce a voltage sag. Watch the other video that Joe just released yesterday. It will answer that question in detail, so we won't go through that here. The answer is yes, it will, to the extent that you will immediately become dumbfounded by the negative part, the ramifications of going down that road and then going, yeah, there's a reason that after Ed, nobody does this.
You know what? That's very interesting that you just said that. It was kind of a dead end, wasn't it?
Been there, done that. Yeah. It's
yeah.
Like,
and like John's saying, like
but
John.
the been there, done that. The release of that, the extension of that would be attenuation. Oh, screw attenuation. Those attenuators suck. That's the whole thing that you run up against. That's where the road splits.
Yeah.
When you get to, you know what? It's too bad attenuators suck because that might have been the ultimate solution. Well, it took a while to crack that nut.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to say that that's the ultimate solution. There's never going to be another evolution of that. I'm just saying where we are now, we're light years farther ahead.
Right.
As a result of introducing the concept of the attenuator and the concept of the reactive load. Right?
And we can debate all night long, which, if we're talking about Eddie Van Halen.
Or we can make some noise.
Yeah, but we could debate which era tone we like of his the most. But I always found it really interesting that he didn't continue to use that. Like, once he found other solutions, he's like, fuck this shit.
What was the solution? Let's find a major manufacturer that will not only pay me to listen to me.
Yeah. I know we can be super cynical about that.
No.
But I'm just
that's
saying, like,
totally legit.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got an idea. I need to take this to the next step. I've talked to a bunch of different guys, and they're not giving me the answers I want. Fortunately, PV actually did have a couple of sharp engineers, and they listen. Okay, we're going to listen to this guy.
Yeah.
Why are we going to listen to this guy?
Because we're paying him a
We're
shitload
paying
of
him
money.
to listen to him. So commerce does actually have a role to play in that, because, if somebody wants to, hey, if you want to, like, cut my brain out of my head and examine it and extract all of the knowledge out of it, great. There's a dollar amount to pay for that, and then that's worth it.
Jay-Z's saying he used a voltage regulator, which that's cool, man. Like, that totally makes sense to me, because I've been like you're saying, I've been in rooms where the power's so bad.
I have a buddy. He's a fellow Italian in New York. He's actually in Connecticut. He calls me on a Sunday. Dude, my amp is like totally humming, and I can't even cut it over the drummer. What's the deal?
What amp? What was he using? Do you remember?
He was using a Pitbull 45 112 combo.
Oh.
True, that was you. Talking about you, my brother.
Yeah.
And who I love dearly. I'm in my car, and I'm like, where are you calling me from? He says, oh, some country club in Connecticut, some... and I said, why are you calling me now? Where are you at in the set? We're about ready to go, start playing. I said, did you do a sound check? Yeah. How was it then? It was great. I said, then what happened? Then we went on stage, and it's not great anymore. When you went on stage, what happened?
Not great anymore.
Oh, we went on stage, and then what happened? Well, we started playing. No. Tell me what exactly happened from the time that you took a break to the time that you went back on stage. We went back on stage, we picked up the guitar, and I said, talk to me like I'm 5. He goes, okay. We went on stage, we picked up my guitar, the lights went down. Stop! Stop right there, stop right there. The lights went down. And he goes, oh yeah, the lights went down. I said, okay, turn the lights back up. And he texted me back, it's cool now, what happened?
Yeah.
Plug in somewhere else.
Yeah.
I've had that happen so many times.
Oh, I've had that happen. And I just say it because, my worst experiences were with that Mark IV. What happened to my amp? It's just, it's not loud enough now, and it sounds, that Mesa overdrive now sounds like a fuzz. It's a different, what happened, That's when I learned about that tower.
Oh, you tuned it down. Okay. I see what's going on.
Oh, is it drop D? So, how are we going to demonstrate things for
We're just going to
party
switch
people?
to the sound
Okay.
preset that we set up for that.
All right, so the Variac. So for everybody who hasn't seen the video on the Fryette YouTube channel, that is called Variacs and Amplifiers.
Go watch it.
Yeah.
Do that much.
And this will make a lot more sense.
I'm late. Let's start over. Hey, Basil. Is it Basil? I'm sorry.
That's funny.
I agree with you. I'm ready to start over. I'm ready to start with a fresh set of drinks. And
But so this is a 1971 metal panel 1959, 100 watt.
It was so
Head.
so pristine inside. It almost made me wispy.
Yeah.
It was that beautiful, and it was the first. I remember. It reminded me of the first time I ever looked inside of the Marshall when I was a green punk that I didn't know jack. I looked in there and went, "That's exactly how I remember it when I was 14 or whatever."
But so I had a question for you that I didn't ask you the other day. The touring circuit in there.
yeah,
Why was that in there? That was stock? Would they do some amps like that out of the factory?
I don't understand why some amps have that combination and some don't.
Okay.
I think
You just see it
I
sometimes
have a
and you
theory
don't
about it.
sometimes. Okay.
I have a theory about it.
So
But-
can you explain to them what the hell we're talking about?
Okay.
It's in the video, by the way.
It's in the video, in the tone stack, in the Marshall tone stack, which is originally a Western Electric / Fender tone stack. There is a filter combination in there called the slope filter combination, which is a resistor and a capacitor that sets how much mid-range scoop there is in the tone stack and what the character of the mid-range sounds like. The original Fender circuit had two particular values of those two the resistor and capacitor in combination, and then at some point between 67 and 70, Marshall started using a different value that amped up the mid-range a little bit. My previous theory, about a 20 or 30-year-old theory, was that sorry, I'm dragging this microphone into my armpit.
Kind of got lost.
Because I hate this. This is why we stopped using these microphones. This is why we stopped using these microphones previously, because of those stupid wires. But
That whenever we would drink drinks, people were like, "This is
Right.
gross."
we put them too close to our throats.
Gullets. Or
Gullets.
gullets.
Gullets. So anyway, where was I?
Between
Oh,
67 and 70.
the slope network. Marshall started experimenting with a different slope network. Before that, my understanding was that, and my operating theory was that when Marshall started evolving their designs, most of the evolutions that I observed from model to model were cost-cutting measures.
Oh.
So when they went from paper insulated, kind of well-made output transformers to scatter-wound transformers, which have less insulation, and they're each transformer is going to behave slightly differently because the winding tolerances are much wider and much sloppier.
Yes.
And they tended to lose some of their mid-range coupling because of that. They used this circuit to compensate for the output transformers that lacked mid-range coupling.
The touring circuit is a
It's a band-aid.
ameliorating
A
the
band-aid
the
for
transform-
shitty output transformer.
Whoa!
And that's true. However,
Wow!
that didn't start happening until until around 75 to 78, around in there.
Oh, okay.
So why would we be seeing that circuit earlier on? And the answer is, apparently they were experimenting with it. Somebody tried it on Hendrix and he liked it.
There's the West Coast Tech services amps.
I don't know if
along
that
the
had
West Coast.
so much to do with the West Coast thing. I think that was a factory thing, that they were kind of screwing around with it.
Okay, hold on though. We know that. Okay, I'm just going to say what I remember with this discussion. When Paul Reed Smith came out with the Hendrix tribute amp, and they were talking about opening up the Hendrix amp and
Right.
finding the touring
Woodstock
circuit.
amp.
They're like, okay, the touring circuit was installed by this tech that would service. Who's
Yeah,
I
but
think
they
the
didn't
guy's
say what
still
the touring
around.
circuit was. We just assumed.
We looked at it because they had pictures of it, and you're like, okay, this must be what it is. So do you think that it was a situation where word got back to Marshall, this is what's happening in the States? Or did they do that at Marshall, and then that came over here?
I don't
Where
think.
did,
I
you
don't
know
think
where
that,
it originated from? Or
I don't
why?
think that. I don't think that that's the way it worked. I think that they were playing around with stuff because we're talking about Strats,
Yeah.
stock Strats.
Right.
There weren't Seymour Duncan pickups around.
Right.
We're talking about a wah-wah pedal and
No
a buzz.
super distortions.
We're talking about coil cords. We're talking about all the things that are getting in between the guitar
And
and
bumping
the
it,
amplifier
yeah.
that are central to the behavior of the whole system that Hendrix used, and B, an impediment to broadening the palette of the system. So at the same time, simultaneously, the elixir and the problem that needed to be solved, right? And this is early on in amplifier development when there's so many things that you could possibly focus on to address: headroom, PA systems, power amp distortion, too much of this, not enough of that, and Strats bright, Les Paul's dark, woo, you know. There's 8 million ways that you could go at that time. So there's a million problems to be solved.
Yeah.
And that you solve one problem, you create a new one.
Yeah.
And
It's part
so
of the fun almost.
So that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's a huge whack-a-mole game.
Which is why John's like, I'm never going to take a Variac to the gig, but I got to get one.
Yeah, I got to get one.
Mess around with
It's
it.
a huge whack-a-mole game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
let's see.
And this whack-a-mole game has taken 50 years to sort of crack. And it turns out the crack is they're all valid.
Totally.
They all
Totally.
occupy an importance in relationship to the objective that you're trying to achieve as a player.
And all
so
of us-
that means that nothing is wrong.
And then there's also, hey, I found
It's
I
100%
found the
objective.
answer.
It's 100% objective.
for the next year and a half.
That's right.
And then there's a new answer.
That's right.
Because I'm hearing things slightly
And that's
different
why
now.
we keep buying, selling, swapping, experimenting, trying
Using the
different
new
things.
stuff. No, going back to
Right.
some old stuff. Let's put them together. Let's combine
Because
things.
every single one of them has a valid little
Yeah.
piece
Ooh,
of the.
that's intriguing.
Yeah, it's a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And just like me, every day, today's solution of the jigsaw puzzle is better than yesterday's, and tomorrow's will be better than today's, and the third day will be just like Monday's.
Yeah. But it'll feel new.
But it'll feel new.
Because it's today. Yeah.
All right, so excuse me. We were talking about this touring circuit thing, and I'm saying that. All right, so then I realized that, like this amp, that circuit shows up in a pristine 1971 amp that had never been messed with, and I do recall some conversations that I heard that they had presented this circuit to Hendrix, and I'm sure that he would have found that useful because it brought out the mid-range characteristic a little more.
Yeah.
And in certain environments, in certain venues, in certain countries, at certain voltages, that might have been a better solution. With certain speakers, he was known to use greenbacks and Alnico speakers and all kinds of
But when
different
Hendrix went
combinations of
ape
stuff.
shit mode, fuzz, dump the wah all the way forward, like turn everything on all the way up. I mean, what's he doing? He's dumping
You might
tremendous
want a
amounts of
little
mid.
bit more mid-range to fill
Absolutely.
out the sound.
Yeah.
If you listen to the Isle of, is it the Isle of Wight? Or with the Rainbow Ridge? The Rainbow Ridge live gig. It is so brittle and bright and
totally.
obnoxious and unlistenable. I mean, I'm not talking about the playing, I'm just talking about the sound.
Yeah.
He manages to manage through it and do his thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to do that. Jeff Beck, you have to be able to do that.
But you know, it's funny.
His Jeff Beck's comment that be prepared to look like a chump you're going out there, you're way out on the front edge of the envelope. You're gonna look like all your friends are gonna go. You gotta go see this guy, and then you go see him. He falls on his fucking ass. That was horrible. That was terrible.
Was Rainbow Bridge? That was Maui, right?
Yeah.
I remember
wind was blowing like crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, they have like moving foam over like the microphones because there's just so much, breeze.
Yeah.
It's like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And like, do a gig and sound good. Let's go.
Yeah.
Chop chop. Like, oh man. And I'm always thinking about how did Mitch feel? Just like. That had to be hell on earth.
Yeah, do you see any side-fill monitors on him?
Exactly. And he's like, and it probably just sounds like, like you can't hear anything. He's like, you're getting no feedback.
Mitch is slamming away, going, "Okay, now I get what Ringo was going through."
Exactly. Oh, that's cool, Tom. You love the Maui 1970 tone. Okay, that's actually cool.
Well, there was some
I
cool
love that
things about
kind
it.
of
You know
thing.
what? When he's playing that really. That really low dynamic section in there where it's like everybody's really dropped out and really quiet and he's making this feedback thing. You can tell he's got the presence control all the way up in his Marshall because when you turn the guitar volume down and have the tone controls all the way up and the presence control all the way on the amp and the amp is down, you hear this ungodly high frequency pitch. It's like the dog whistle sound. It's way back there and it's kind of coming in and out going.
It was that tune that started off with kind of the Spanish Phrygian kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the parasitic oscillation of that particular year of Marshall that was way out of control. If you set the amp a certain way, it would just start oscillating.
Well, I only finally learned.
It was like on the verge of blowing up right there.
See, I've been listening.
But it sounded clean.
I've been listening to that sound my whole life.
Yeah.
On Hendrix recordings.
And that's.
But it was only in the last 2 years when you're like, Joe, I need you to make some videos where we're talking about oscillation. I'm like, oh, that's what this is called. That's what causes
That's
it.
what you
all
learned.
of this stuff. Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
basically
Joe, I need you to take a pickup and lay it right on top of an output transformer. We need to like rub people.
But the thing is like
in
I have an entire lifetime of listening to all of these different oddball
it wasn't
squawks
bad to
and
you. It was
squeals.
just like the sound he was getting.
And he would make music with it.
Oh,
right?
And that's a defect? Oh,
But
learned.
now I know what it's called.
Yeah, and now you just like ruined my whole image of like that was a fault. That wasn't music. It was still music because you learned it that way.
Isn't that cool? I love that, man. You've listened to that concert every night for the last 3 months. That's awesome.
Hey, are we gonna fucking play? Every time I do this, I think in the first 30 minutes we should start making some noise. And here it is, 3 hours later.
Well, so what are we going to demonstrate here? Are we going to vary the sucker down?
We're going to start with the amp at 120 volts.
Okay.
And bash on it a little bit.
All right.
And then we're going to turn it down and bash on a little bit. So I'm going to switch my presets so that there is a little bit of room mic, but mostly it's going to be the cab mic and the PLIR together.
Okay, so I'm just going to play basic crap so we can hear the alterations.
In fact, while you're doing that, I'm actually going to listen to it on headphones so I can make sure that it's just not some insanely bad
All right.
expression of Now that's as close as we get to a right-hand sweep as possible, all right?
Right.
So now I'm going to switch the Variac down to, this is 120 volts. Now I'm going to switch it down to 90. Hold on one sec.
What's the number now?
120.
120.
So now do some of your hammer-on stuff.
Like what kind of hammer-on stuff? like.
$120.
Same thing?
Yeah. $90.
90?
I bet you that's the most you've ever practiced that song.
Is that practicing?
Or whatever you want.
I didn't even know how to play it before we turned on the amp, and I'm like, let me try and play that.
Yeah, but you really can hear, and you guys heard it. You really can hear the difference in compression when the amp is Variac. The top end and the bottom end fall away a little bit, and the mid-range comes forward a little bit, but it's tempered by the compression. So what you really hear is the fundamental of the string more.
Yeah.
You know the distortion is there. You fundamentally hear the distortion, but the string harmonic is popping out.
What was the gradations you did? You did
I was just doing 120 and 90.
And 90. That's interesting.
And I was switching back and forth.
Yeah, 90 was smooth.
90 was smooth.
Yeah, it was smooth.
Smooth.
Yeah. Huh. You going to bed? Yeah, we're probably going to bed soon too. We're coming up on 3 hours.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, rail it, but turn the bass to 0. Well, it is railed. I mean, all that we would do by turning the bass to 0. Okay, let's turn the bass to 0.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously kept it the same so we could hear like a scientific test. We weren't trying to dial in the ultimate tone.
Yeah, and we're in
at
the
each stop, right?
Are we in the top one is the hot input, right?
Yes.
So I've got the presence at 4, bass at 6, mid-range at 6, treble at 6, and the volume 1 dimed. All right. So the only thing that would be different is turning the bass to 0. And
so I'll
and
just play that
what
same
turning the
riff.
bass to 0 would do would be reducing the amount of saturation. But happy to do it.
And a little bit of flub.
Reduce a little bit of the flub.
A little bit of
yeah.
flub.
But not that we're really getting
I'm
that
not
much
feeling
flub.
much. Yeah.
Well, this particular amp it's got 500 plate volts. This thing is like slang. It's not. We can't even remotely get it up at the level that we could experience that in this room.
Well,
But
Scott, I mean, what you're saying, that's how I normally think of doing this thing, is dime everything and then I just dump the bass off completely. So is that what we've done now?
so the bass is at 0, and we're on the 90 volt position.
90 volts, full right hand sweep, bass is completely off.
90 volts, full range.
that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Well, yeah, because to
Hold
me,
that thought
Yeah.
for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Give me more than 1 second, but
Yeah. All right. Steve left the building.
Yeah.
Scott, that's totally how I do that. And to me, the second I started playing it with no bass, I was like, that's maybe not the sound on Van Halen 1, but that's kind of what I'm used to, like going for that tone. It is thinner, and there's less gain, but it leaves room for the bass player to kind of be big and fat underneath there, right? Still have the EQ at noon. I think with this amp, if everything's at noon, you're not going to get enough gain running through the whole circuit. Like everything's dimed, and well, I can just do it again. This is with the bass is all the way up again. Okay, and now. That's no bass at all. Are you coming back?
yeah, because they're
Did you
not
get
going to really
lost?
hear.
Alyssa in the house. Hey, baby.
They're not really going to hear the difference because the amp mic and the PLIR weren't turned on when you were playing.
Oh.
So, okay, you want to do,
I don't know what we're doing next.
just repeat what you did because they probably didn't hear what you were saying about the bass.
So this is with the bass all the way up. I was just talking about the moment that you dumped the bass all the way off, I was like, that's the EVH effect with this amp.
Okay.
It leaves room for the bass player.
Okay, so the bass is already. Let me hear that.
Okay. Okay. All the way dumped.
Okay, so here's the thing. We're variacing the amp, but we also have it at almost speaking level with the power station here. So we're not really reacting as much to what we're feeling out of the cabinet when you change the bass.
Sure.
So me personally, I prefer the bass all the way up because I'm hearing a little power low end saturation.
But we're not playing with the rest of the band.
That's right. That's right.
And that's the key. Anytime, that's one of the revealing things when you hear isolated Ed tracks, is you're like, shit, it's thin.
You know what I was most concerned about?
Huh.
I was most concerned about that I actually did turn off my transmitter before I went to the bathroom.
I remember to do that when I went back. I turned it off.
Okay, so you heard everything I said. All right, good.
So you turn it off when you went in there?
I thought I did. I hope I did.
I love that. We're kind of on not martinis. What are those?
Might as well be.
Uh-huh. Yep. What about jumping the inputs and using the Variac? Any difference? Oh, that's Harold. What's up, my friend?
Harold.
Oh, dude.
Let me get a jumper. See, I didn't use the jumper because Friedman's all about, oh man, don't jumper it, you ruin it.
Oh, that's what he says?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's his big thing.
Wow. I didn't know that.
All right, so let's see. We have to, in order to jumper this, we have to get this to go over here, and then we have to do this. These stupid cables. Yeah, we have to do this. See how you guys are? I mean, it's like, yeah, just put.
This is why we're here.
Here's what's going to happen if we do a stereo power station. You're going to ask for a third channel, 3 power amps, so that you can have center dry. That's what's going to happen, I'm telling you. I know you people too well. Okay, so now, generally when you jump the channels, you don't turn the bass all right-hand sweep, because then that's just too much. So I'm turning it up to about,
Well, unless you dump the bass all the way off.
all right, full right-hand sweep, everything except the bass on 0, channels jumped.
This is what I would do. This is how I would set the amp up. Wait. Sorry.
Wait, what?
Where are we at with the Variac? Just
90.
so I know. We're at 90?
Yeah.
Can we go to 120 first?
Jesus, you're just
Yeah, I know. I'm a diva. All right. All right.
the
Now.
expression on his face should be enough right there.
Ah, it's bliss. 90?
This is why the girls go home, right?
We're at 90?
Happy now?
Very happy. Very happy. Okay, that was very interesting.
All right.
But you know what? I
Come on.
was just as happy at 120. Totally.
Where I'm at right now
Yeah.
in my life, great. But there are so many other ways to get that and do it better these days. That all this falderall is fun to goof around with. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there are better, more efficient, more effective solutions to all of these things that then were available at that time. But it is a blast to goof around with it. I made a little quick video after we did all of this, where I did a full right-hand sweep of the D120 Variac to 100 volts, and it did all of that. Plus, it had more low-end punch if you wanted it. And you could,
Well, this is my kind of point that I'm thinking is this is really fun to do.
yeah,
But what you do is you want to play Wanted Dead or Alive, or Dead or Alive. You want to play Van Halen, and then you do that for 3 hours, and you go, wait a minute, I don't want to be Van Halen. Like
Well-
that's so.
well,
fun.
you're not.
It's like what
you're not Van Halen.
what Ziegler was saying. Is it's like, yeah, I got the Variac, but then it's like, why didn't you take it to the gig? Well, then maybe
Can't.
you don't want to be Van Halen, you know?
I don't have that big of a truck. I like Brent Tom. Tri-power station. There you go. Okay, well, if we ever decide to get that nuts, thank you, Tom. I'll actually credit you that with the name. It's basically the same as my everyday rig 1970 lead on Variac power station run into either G12 and G. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. You can do that. See, what is it that makes you want to go through all of that and go to a gig? It's either a level
Boredom.
a level of commitment
Okay, fine.
or just
So
one-upmanship,
sick of my sound.
one-upmanship or boredom.
Yeah.
There's a creative aspect to that, sure, but I mean, if you're actually not doing, if you're actually not doing that kind of music, you're doing a variety of music, or you're doing your
And
own
you're like, what the
music,
hell am I doing?
You're like, then that becomes a stepping stone, a point, a demarcation point where you have to progress to the next level of
Agreed.
your own personal musical expression.
Right. But you know, I mean, I can't think like there's been so many times in my life where having the knowledge of how to get particular sounds from iconic recordings comes in really handy in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're in a room with somebody and they're going, you know, we need I don't know, pick your popular act, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always like super guitar dork approved stuff. But when you're a geek and you learn how all those records were made and what people were using, it's really great to have that shorthand available in your head. Oh, okay, that's how we get that. Even if you don't have like the right gear on hand, You can kind of approximate it if you
That's-
kind of went through all these exercises and done all this bullshit.
Well, that's experience, demand, ability to navigate the slew of gear options that you're presented with as a guitar player. I mean, like, sometimes I like these glasses better than those other glasses.
I'm big on that.
Yeah.
I'm big on that. That's why I have too many sneakers.
Actually, the reason I switch is because those are all smudged with fingerprints. I can't see anymore, and I'm too lazy to wipe them off.
Well, I only have one pair, but here's what I like to do to switch shit up.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, now your real personality is coming out. You know what? I want another margarita and a peanut butter sandwich, and I think that this is a really good opportunity to bail out so that we can do that before we can no longer operate motor vehicles legally.
Hey, but you know what? Olivier's the man for loaning this to us.
Olivier is our sales manager. He's from France. He's a great guy. He's a psycho about old gear. We've known each other for years and years and years, and he just bought this. It just popped up on the French version of eBay or not eBay, the other one, Craigslist. They don't have a French Craigslist, but there's a thing like it. And
I think my girlfriend is telling me to not do this right now.
he stumbled across this and just like snagged it. And man, when I opened it up, I just went, oh, look at that. Look at that.
You had a little bit of that.
I had, you know what it was? It was, here's an amp that didn't get opened up where somebody went, oh, I think I can make it better.
Well, I was talking to Olivier about it, and he got it from, it was a one-owner amplifier, and the person who owned it was deceased, and the family was
That's what I said earlier, yeah. And you were sitting right here.
Oh, okay.
That's all right.
That's all right.
See, we don't
feed
listen
me
to
more
each
liquor.
other. That can be arranged.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
No, you're not. Peeps, folks, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. I really had a big blast. I don't know if you picked up on the energy, but I'm sure you did. I'm having more fun tonight than a barrel of monkeys. We had snacks.
Just how much fun is
We
a
had
barrel of monkeys,
tones.
though? Come on.
We had a bitchin' red half stack. We had the killingest margaritas on the planet.
Actually, that's true. That's not even, all that other stuff was lies.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
actually the truth.
Yeah, and we actually got the sound really decent and it held together. So we'll do our level best to screw up the sound next time so that you'll have something to complain about. And
hey, if you guys are, well, if you're here, you're super geeks anyway. I would definitely check out the video that we put out yesterday. Variacs and Amplifiers, I think is what it's called.
and what's
Because it was all the guts of this stuff.
and and why you want to watch that is because you'll see that it was a revelation to me as much as it would be to you, because we all get
Huge
to
to me.
circle back.
Yeah.
Here's what we do. We explore, we move on. We explore, we move on. But then when we circle back, we go,
But
this
you were
seems familiar.
But you were explaining what was happening. And I'm not kidding. Do you remember this? When we rapped, when I turned off the camera, Olivia, who was there, we were, because we just felt like that was a symposium.
Well, you know what I felt about it was, I've circled back on this stuff a number of times over the past decades, and each time I do that, I realize I'm in a better position to articulate what I observed than I was the last time.
Oh, that makes sense.
And that is the fun
just
part
keep
for
getting
me,
better.
because I get to go, holy shit, I don't have my head completely parked up my ass all the time. I actually sort of,
Just 70% of the time.
just 70% of the time, which is an
Which,
accomplishment.
hey man, 10 years ago, was it still 80?
That's right.
You know,
It was
so-
more like 50. Well, 20 years ago. 50.
You mean
10 years
getting
ago,
worse?
maybe it was 70. 5 years ago, it was 80. Now it's like 90.
Amplifier
that-
TED Talk.
And
yes.
that's progress, boys and girls. So
Yeah.
in 10 years, we'll do this again, and like we'll discover some whole new little nuance. Because before we crawl into our little graves, we're going to be going, what about if you just change that capacitor to the value in
Right.
between the last two that you did last time?
Yeah.
It still won't be.
Won't
And we,
be
and we
enough.
got to and we got to
Yeah.
stop losing people. We lost Belzer this week.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
stop losing people.
Yeah, that sucks.
Us old farts have got to stop dying.
Yeah.
We still got more information to dump into the stratosphere before we take off.
Yeah.
Love you all. Thank you for hanging. Thank you for indulging us.
Thanks for hanging, guys.
And you all be good to each other. We love you very much. See you whenever that in 2 weeks. We'll have some new cycle thing to dive into.
Nice one, brother.
It'll take us that much time to sober up after this.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good night, you guys. See you soon.
Bye.